Greetings. Allow me to welcome you to For the Love of Fiction, a podcast dedicated to discussing story and character across a wide range of mediums. I am your host. After some shenanigans last week, I am your host, Gavin Groves, and with me is my co-host in his proper position, Mr. Mark Tobit. How you doing?
I feel I did the intro better. But that's just a personal opinion, and that's what this is all about, right? It's all about our opinions.
Well, I try to sort of, as I mentioned, I like to do a sort of like welcoming, in a cafe, jazz bar, friendly atmosphere. Come and sit with me. Whereas you're kind of like the listeners strapped to like a chair with a laser over his head, and you're a Bond villain.
So glad you could join me.
I kind of feel like your presentation style is that of dictating to a captive audience more than anything else. That's a compliment, though.
I can take that.
So, apart from that, man, are you okay? How are you?
Same old, same old. I've got what is becoming my traditional curry before pod, and I'm all heated up and ready to go.
Very good. So, a few things on the agenda beforehand, though. A few things that have happened in the last week or so in the realms of culture. Well, fiction culture, let's say. I'm going to kick it off straight away, Mark, with probably the biggest thing that's happened specifically on the day of recording, and that is the release of the first trailer for the upcoming Transformers CGI movie, Transformers 1. I assume that you watched the trailer today?
Yeah, I checked it out about half an hour ago.
So you're red raw and ready to go. So, what did you think?
That was a touch jarring.
Really? Okay.
I'm into it. I'm into the whole kind of like the weird buddy thing that's going on. But at the same time, after all these years of all of these kind of mortal enemies that we've seen these two in, to have that first scene just be them like bickering roommates was just a real whiplash for me for a second.
Megatron, Optimus Prime, obviously starting off in like some kind of precinct, like police station, that having been arrested, and they're like, "Whoa, what's going on?"
I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to you right now.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'm sure it's going to be funny. Right? It was just a bit surprising, like in terms of like if this is in, this probably isn't in the same canon as Bay and all that sort of stuff, but there is an established atmosphere between these two characters, and to see it so very much not in these scenes was it was interesting. I want to see what causes the fallout between the two of them, which I'm wondering if Transformers 1's going to address that. So
yeah, I think you're forgetting all the expanded media that's happened, Mark. Like in many, many, many versions of Transformers media before Orion Pax and before Orion Pax becomes spoiler Optimus Prime, before D16 spoiler becomes Megatron, whatever. In the various forms of Transformers expanded universe media, they are often like in communication with each other.
Yeah, I've seen that they've been colleagues, that they've acknowledged each other, but this was just kind of like two guys at college in a roommates kind of situation. It felt very sort of like almost more familiar than I'd seen before in the past with likes of All Hail Megatron and all that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
So
it was definitely not got the dark tones.
Exactly. So and Bumblebee seems to be
having fun, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I'm into it. It's a new angle, and I always appreciate when you take an established IP that's been around for this long and try and rotate it one more time and see if we can find a new facet on the diamond, so to speak.
Let's be honest, right? Transformers as a franchise has survived for so long and been consistently a part of the pop culture zeitgeist because it has transformed over and over and over again. Like every few, they sort of like, Hasbro is sort of in this like mold now where they sort of do 3 seasons transform, 3 seasons transform. They sort of do a 3-season show each time. You've got
to evolve, haven't you? So
yeah, that's right. The Cybertron trilogy arc. There, Prime was 3 seasons, Beast Wars was 3 seasons, the War for Cybertron Siege, and then Kingdom, that's 3 seasons. So I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. Based on what I'd read coming into this, knowing the fact you've got like Chris Hemsworth and like Scarlett Johansson, like on the voice cast, I wasn't expecting some dark and serious movie. I was expecting pretty much what I saw.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. Like, I mean, like, I didn't know anything about it beforehand apart from what they said. It's called Transformers One. It's a mainstream as fuck, movie, CGI movie about Optimus Prime and Megatron when they're young. You know, like I pretty much, yeah. I mean, tonally, it was a very like modern take, with like the humor and whatever. But I thought it looked fine, to be honest with you. I'm kind of at this point in my life now where I don't even give a shit. Like sometimes Transformers in its modern interpretations is very good, and sometimes it's not. It just is the way it is. The Netflix trilogy was very, very flawed for what it was, and like I feel like was an attempt to mainstream Transformers, and this almost seems like a reaction to it. Siege, Earthrise and Kingdom and all that. It was very serious, and the characters were very down. It was very depressing.
Yeah.
And they
Sometimes
did
things got to be a bit fun sometimes with these sort of things.
this. What I was about to say, and they like Hasbro were very naughty, and they like didn't go with like proper voice actors. They hired cheap voice actors as well, so that comes across. And like the best thing about that series was that the characters looked like the toys. And they looked very good as the toys. But the moment they started speaking, the show just sort of meandered into misery. The odd character here and there was quite well done. I actually thought the Beast Wars characters were the best in that, actually. But they're still not as good as the original Beast Wars cartoon. But and this Transformers one, just like, yeah, it looks like they're trying to have some fun with it. They've got this like massive voice cast on it. They're gonna want them to flex their their skills and have a bit of fun. I did hear that Peter Cullen was like in communication with Chris Hemsworth about his performance as Optimus Prime / Orion Pax.
Nice. Good.
So to help him as well. He just mentioned it recently, which is great. There's a couple of times where he almost sounded like the character, almost sounded like Cullen, which I thought was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anything, look, pretty much what you said. Like the dressing, the world building, the universe, it is what it is as far as I'm concerned. Fine, whatever. But like what I saw was like, okay, he's got to become Optimus Prime at some point. There's got to be a civil war at some point. They're not going to be buddies at some point. Megatron Prime, obviously. So yeah, I'm actually kind of on board with watching this film to see what happens. Yeah, I kind of want to see it now. I'm kind of like, I'm not like thinking this is going to be a masterpiece. I mean, is a Transformers movie a masterpiece? No, none of them are. Simple. I mean, the truth. The comics are better. The comics is where the good storytelling is. It's always been that way. So the films are just like there to sell toys to kids. And this looks like a kids movie, and that's fine. That's fine.
I had this see not too long ago when I checked out that new Turtles movie, that Mutant Madness.
Yeah, I still haven't seen that actually. I need to see it.
I went in with the intention of like I'm going to check it out because it's Turtles, but I wasn't too hot on the art style or anything like that. But if I'm honest, I actually enjoyed it immensely. Like,
yeah, I need to get around to watching that. Hold that, because we're going to do a Turtles movie episode at some point in the future.
Nice. We'll come back. Yeah, put a pin in that one,
I will watch it definitely. I'll definitely be coming to this at some point. So,
chill.
But yeah, just like an immediate take on this, like with the pop music and whatever, and the Marvel humor and the whatever, and like, I'm down. Yeah. Let's give it a go. Looking forward to it. What this means, though, Mark, is the release day, which is September the 20th. If we have started season 2 of the podcast, we're going to be doing a Transformers special. It's going to have to be, isn't it? Just to celebrate.
We're going back to our roots.
Absolutely. Maybe it's time we ranked those awful Michael Bay movies and complained about them for 3 hours. That's what people want to hear, right? That's what people want to hear. Us complaining about terrible Transformers movies.
I don't know if I got that much vitriol, man. I will be honest.
It's true, they're terrible. Let's not get on that. Anyway, anything else? What else? So what you been up to, man?
Well, this week I decided I wasn't going to do anything that taxed my brain too much. I wanted some low-level, chill sort of like movies to watch. So I checked out a couple of things. Funny enough, a through line seemed to exist between all of them is Jake Gyllenhaal of all things.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I ended up watching.
No, you didn't.
The Roadhouse remake.
No, why? Why?
Because I got it on streaming and I don't have to pay for it. I don't know.
Why did you watch it? Why? This is, if there was ever a movie that didn't need to be made, this was it. I saw the announcement and I was just like, Jake, what are you doing? Why are you in this? You are a respectable actor. You have made some brilliant movies, and you're in this trashy Hollywood remake of a cult classic, of a man who was beloved, frankly. Like, you're basically shitting on his grave. This is as bad as an idea of a remake as fucking The Crow, as far as I'm concerned. Like, Brandon Lee's turning in his grave, Patrick Swayze, bless him, turning in his grave. Like, what the fuck, mate? Why?
It was
All
all
right. Anyway, ran over. So did you enjoy it?
It was all right.
I'm very happy for you. Anyway, next.
Then I also checked out that Michael Bay movie from 2022, which is Ambulance.
Ambulance? What's this? I've not heard of this.
Yeah, the best way I could describe it is probably like Heat Light. And it's in like it's set in LA. It's about a bank robbery that goes awry, with Gyllenhaal and his crew robbing a bank and then escaping and hijacking an ambulance with a shot cop in the back. And with the EMT and the cop, they go on a police chase, holding them hostage, trying to work out how to escape the chasing cops. And it's a Michael Bay movie. So I will say that it's noticeable that at some point recently, Michael Bay has dropped a whole bunch of money into drones, because a lot of these shots in this literally almost give you vertigo. The way in which they swing up the sides of buildings, spin around, and then come back down. And it's got all of the tropes you expect in a Michael Bay movie. It's all right. I mean, as I said,
to be honest, I'd actually forgotten that he was making movies still.
Yeah.
Like, Transformers Done Last Night was such a fucking dreck of a movie. My God, that film was so awful. And I hadn't actually heard of him making anything, Just looking now at, he did The Last Night in 2017. Right? 2017. That's fucking 7 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
6 Underground for Netflix.
6 Underground was okay.
And then Ambulance 2022.
Yeah. Thing is, I mean, once I realised Gyllenhaal's in both these movies, I have time for him because
I like him a lot.
I watched him Nightcrawler, and that was a phenomenal movie.
I need to see that actually. I've still not got around to it. It's
absolutely
on my
brilliant.
list.
And I saw another one recently. It's kind of like, it felt like it's an indie movie or something. With almost the entirety of the movie is him as a 911 dispatch receiver, and you don't see anything in the movie other than him just sat there talking. But it's all from the point of view of just record the conversation he's having over his headset and everything. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but that was an immensely good movie as well. He's got range.
He's great. No, he's a great actor. He's a great actor.
And he's got himself fucking ripped for Roadhouse.
I saw, yeah.
Like, could not believe that. I was like, bloody hell, man! When did you become an action hero? But nonetheless, yeah, it was nothing really to sort of brag about this week.
A little bit of trivia for you, though, actually. I was just looking, actually, because on the Wikipedia page while we're talking about this, and, Ambulance, actually, Michael Bay's highest-rated Rotten Tomatoes score now, with 68%.
Yeah,
that's 1% higher than his second highest-rated movie.
What was the second highest?
It's The Rock, which, if you were to say to me, what is Michael Bay's best movie that doesn't involve giant robots, I'd probably say The Rock. I actually do really
I would
really
say
like that
personally,
movie.
The Rock is better than Ambulance, though.
Yeah.
Because you automatically get 10 points just for having Nicolas Cage in your movie.
Nicolas Cage and Ed Harris in the
and
same
Sean
movie.
Connery.
And Sean Connery, it is, I actually think it's a bit of Michael Bean. Come on, dude. Michael fucking Bean's in it, man.
John C. McGinley, yeah.
Give me this cast, man. Give me this cast. This is like, that is a good movie for me, Don't get me, it's not like some kind of it's not a fucking masterpiece, but
But it is a perfect 90s action movie.
Yeah, it's good.
It's got everything you asked for in a blockbuster 90s action movie. Yeah.
It's good. I like it. The Hans Zimmer score is pretty good as well, despite the fact he's ripped himself off with it over and over again since then. But you can you can hum it.
Yeah.
So, right, that's cool. Well, I actually started watching a TV series this week, Mark. A TV series that has taken over the cultural zeitgeist of our social media. Whether or not you know what I'm talking about, it doesn't matter. I'm going to tell you anyway. It is, of course, Fallout. Have you attempted this yet?
Not yet, although I've been watching it. Turns up on every other YouTube ad recently.
That's because, right, not only is this show very good, it is tonally so true to the games that it has caused a resurgence in people playing the games on Steam. There's a 400% increased player base on all the games.
That's cool.
It made me reinstall Fallout 4, which I have owned for nearly 4 years and still haven't played.
Huh.
So I thought I need to fucking play this game because I like 3 a lot and New Vegas. Big fan of both those games. But
I'm going to be honest. The whole Fallout thing passed me by a little bit. To be honest,
you've never been into what would I say, Bethesda style RPGs. They're just not been your thing.
Thing is, I played Fallout 3 for about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got out the vault, I went into the nearest town, I punched a cow, and I got run out and killed. That was literally the extent of
actually. I remember that, actually.
What was worse is because I was running out of the town with the townsfolk chasing me. I ran out, auto-saved the game with me with a fraction of my health left. So every time I loaded the game up, I'd spawn and get immediately killed by the still angry townsfolk.
Look, dude, it's the wasteland. It's a brutal place. What can I say?
You can't punch a cow. So
I remember that, actually. Cool. I actually really like the games, funnily enough, but like they are, Bethesda RPGs are an acquired taste, and they're not to your taste. So New Vegas is more your thing anyway, because that game is absolutely bonkers. It's absolutely mad.
I can imagine the whole kind of sort of like Viva Las Vegas vibe of everything.
It's not the Vegas. It's Fallout 1 and 2 are like classic PC RPGs, and like they were made by different people. So what they're made by, but then now they're made by Bethesda. Then they were made by Interplay. Many people who worked on those games worked on Obsidian, who made KOTOR 2, Knights of the Republic 2.
Classic.
And that Obsidian ended up making Fallout New Vegas, ironically, which is like part of the reason why it sort of carries the tone over from the original games. There's even like a bunch of like Romans in it running around in togas, completely insane, trying to like rule the wasteland with a Caesar at the beginning of it. It's just like absolutely bonkers. It's totally bonkers.
That does sound very cool.
It is. It's crazy when you're talking to them as well. They're like, "Hail Caesar!" and you're like, "Huh." And anyway, in the wasteland, with Western music and 40s music being played. I mean, that's one of the things that's always like I've enjoyed about Fallout is the fact it's like an amalgamation of tones. You've got like it's like a Western. It's post-apocalyptic. Mad Max 2 style deserts. Yeah, it's also set in terms of its cultural context in like the Atomic Family 40s/50s era as well.
Retrofuturism.
It is. That's right. It's like the Jetsons.
Yeah.
And that combination of that plus super dark humor, super gory as fuck as well, and like really crazy characters means it has this really, really fascinating flavor of its own that makes it really unique and interesting. And I say this TV series really captures it. It really does. They've done such a good job.
I'll make some time for it. I mean, I've recently computer game adaptations. I mean, after like sort of Twisted Metal and stuff, they seem to be a lot more true to the original lore.
Here's the thing, that's what I was trying to get at. Like with Twisted Metal as well, because I've actually watched about 3/4 of that now. Like very often, adapting video game stories to a different medium, especially a film, a non-interactive medium, let's say, is very challenging. Because a lot of video game stories are based on player agency and player choice. And it requires a massive amount of change, let's say, to completely transfer a story such as this into, accurately into a film.
You've got to have an engaging main character to take the place of the player. So
yes, exactly. What I think is more effective, unless of course we're talking about these prestige AAA video games that think they're movies, like Last of Us. I mean, I'm not a fan of these games personally. I've just recently finished playing the fucking Tomb Raider games. Just they can do one as far as I'm concerned. I have the mindset of like, if I'm playing a video game, I'm playing a video game. I don't need to have cutscenes constantly, like that have no drama whatsoever. That just take me out of the gameplay. It really annoys me. I'm not a fan of it. Never been a fan of it. Never will be. I like video games to be about gameplay, about player agency. So like, like the best part of the medium. Anyway, what I'm trying to say, going off topic, is that what the Fallout TV series does is that it doesn't tell a story from the games per se. It takes the world, replicates it in a very, very effective way, tonally especially, and tells its own story with its own characters.
It's probably the best way, yeah.
Absolutely. And in this sense, it's very true to the essence of the games. So I thoroughly recommend you give it a go. Because it's funny as well, mate. It is quite funny and gory. So yeah, yeah. Like if you've played the games, there's a lot of Easter eggs in there for you. But it's not like the Super Mario Brothers like movie level in your face constantly through the movie playing spot the Easter egg. Like as you know, I'll give you a very quick example. As you know, like these RPGs involve a certain amount of exploration, going into empty rooms, looking through for resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you get to see characters do that, briefly, not all the way through it, just briefly. You're like, nice, And there's like an ability you can unlock called is it Bloody Mess in Fallout 3, where when you activate it and you kill people, they explode in the most gory ways possible. And sometimes when people kill other people, they die in the most horrifically explosive ways. It's hilariously just like Bloody Mess in the game. And I'm like, do you know what? That's sick. I'm there for it. I'm down with it.
I mean,
like
comedy gore has its place in entertainment.
Exactly, and it's in the game, and they've brought it forward into the series as well. So there's loads of like cool ideas from it. So I think this is a bit of a banger so far. I'm about halfway through it, so I'm enjoying it. I'm looking forward to finishing it. So
excellent.
All right then. So I think we'll have a little bit of a break there, and when we come back, we're going to start the first episode of our ongoing series titled 90s Movie Classics. What better movie to start this off with? It's The Matrix. Let's go, Mark. After the break, you're back in the seat.
As I should be.
Be right back.
Well, look who's back in the driver's seat. Okay. So we're going to just lead into the first one of our two movies. That would be The Matrix. Now, let's just start at the beginning on this one. This movie was a watershed moment for me personally, and I think for action cinema in general. I feel like after this came out, everything changed a little bit in cinema as far as the movies that we were taking in. And it's had ripple effects throughout a lot of different types of culture afterwards. And we're going to be getting into that in a little bit. I imagine, Gav, you've got some suggestions on that side of things as well.
Yes, of course. Yes.
But let's just start at the beginning. Matrix, released on the 31st of March, 1999. I'm going to make clear with regards to that date because I think another date is going to be coming up in the near future just to show that this wasn't ripping off anything in any fashion. It's a sci-fi cyberpunk action movie made by the Wachowskis. With a budget of 63 million, it returned 460 million.
Incredible. When you think about it, like movies cost so much money to make, and like when you think about like how this movie was like at the top of its game when it came out, like in terms of its special effects, 60 million doesn't even sound like a lot. But I'd also like to point out, Mark, that like the Wachowskis' previous movie cost how much to make? What, 2-3 million to make? Something like that?
Something like that. It was, yeah.
Like,
let me just Google that. Wait a second, because
I
know that it was like a massive departure from what they'd made before, because that was just a normal thriller. It wasn't an action movie or anything like that.
Yeah, based on the research that I've been doing, they'd like...
budget 6 million, box office 7 million. So it wasn't even really kind of... because
it was a critical darling, wasn't it? More than anything else.
I mean, this is it. I mean... The only reason that I know what Bound is because I was working in the cinema when it came out, or I believe some friends of mine were, and they just used to say that every bloke in the cinema knew when the nude scene was because that was the moment when they make the excuse and go check it out on the screen. So, but
when Bound came out, actually, I remember it very well.
But by comparison to that, this was just unprecedented. You did not see this coming from the pair of them.
Mm-hmm.
So. This movie, let's go. Firstly, the cast. I mean, the cast at the time were not unknowns, but they weren't known for this style of movie, were they?
No.
So you got Thomas Anderson / Neo, played by Keanu Reeves. Trinity, played by Carrie-Anne Moss. Morpheus by Lawrence Fishburne. Agent Smith by Hugo Weaving. Cypher by Joe Pantoliano. And The Oracle by Gloria Foster. Now, there are more characters in this movie, but I feel that these 6 are the key...
Yeah, they're like the key players, yeah.
Yeah. So, straight off the bat, this movie does not really... It just gives you questions more than anything else as you try to understand what's going on. It starts with code streaming across the screen, voices talking as if on telephone calls, and just trying to appreciate what is happening here, until eventually it leads to the approach of police officers coming in on an abandoned hotel, wherein we find Trinity is working on a keyboard. As she's working, she gets confronted by said police, who are joined by the agents downstairs, who advise them that it's far too late. Your men are already dead. And there's going to be a couple of times during this recap where I say, and then they fight, or and then they ran, or then they did this, that. But I don't feel that does justice to some of the visuals that this movie gives you. I mean, that first sequence where she jumps up, raises the leg, and springs her arms out just before she boots the police officer, that is one that's been satirized backwards and forwards, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm. But this is all. This is also like whole sequence is heavily influenced by something else, though, isn't it?
Oh, the wire fu style.
No, the opening sequence of this movie is heavily influenced by Ghost in the Shell.
Ah, I see.
The opening sequence where the protagonist, because the major, she makes that attack, and she drives around the building and flies in, and all the glass flies out, and she obviously the green text is synonymous with Ghost in the Shell as well, so that's a very obvious hallmark. But just the fact that the way the story starts, let's say, with death-defying, stealth, let's say, action sequence, I think tonally, thematically, sort of is showing its influences on its sleeve straight away.
Yeah, it's not hiding it. It's very clear what it's paying homage to. Yeah,
this film is very much homage to Asian cinema in general, isn't it? Overall, and with the fight scenes and whatever, they start going Fist of the North Star towards the end, don't they? They're doing enough, but
more or less, yeah.
But Carrie-Anne Moss is definitely a mirror image at the beginning of this movie to the Major, in my opinion.
Absolutely, she's got the real sort of. I mean, straight off the bat, that this is a strong woman.
Yeah.
So for everything from the way she holds herself to the way in which she pretty much beats the living daylights out of every single man in that room.
Yeah.
And then she runs and she gets pursued by the agents across the rooftops. At which point, this is the only cagey scene I would say in terms of effects on the entire movie. And that's
it's
when she
aged
dives
quite badly.
when she dives off that rooftop and goes through the window. It's the only scene which I can say, that not quite.
Yeah.
Everything else, I can't fault this movie, especially for the era and everything like that. It's all brilliant, but that one. And eventually leads to her sort of running to a phone box, almost being mowed down by an agent driving a garbage truck, and she answers the phone, at which point she disappears. More questions. Okay, so we then snap to Thomas Anderson, who goes by the hacker name Neo, and this is back in the 90s when hackers were actually capable of doing all sorts of things. Not the modern day anonymous thing that you see hackers are now, but back in the 90s, hackers were this. They were almost a supernatural force, weren't they? That they were just sort of this subculture of humanity that were capable of doing anything and everything. So
they were this. It was this imagined lifestyle, wasn't it? The concept of hackers as the cultural concept of hackers, let's say, sort of came around with the rise of the internet, isn't it? And internet fear. Obviously the film Hackers as well. Which I believe
Johnny Lee Miller, Angelina Jolie, classic.
Yeah. This is this predates The Matrix by a few years, if I remember correctly, and obviously Johnny Mnemonic as well, which also had Keanu Reeves in it. I mean, that's where the cyberpunk aesthetic and the cyberpunk context comes from with The Matrix, isn't it? It's use of the internet as a narrative mechanic, a story mechanic, let's say, pretty much all the way through the movie. It's interesting, yeah. Sorry, anyway,
I want this, man. Yeah. Okay, so eventually, Trinity contacts Thomas and tells him to seek out Morpheus. At which point, agents come to his office, and Morpheus actually contacts him via a mobile phone, and bids him to escape the office. Don't fall into the hands of the agents. This results in him hanging off the edge of the building from a window ledge and realizing he can't do it. He's just not brave enough to attempt this. And he surrenders himself to the agents, whereupon he's interrogated. And at this point, we start to see reality bending taking place, wherein they remove his mouth. At this, they also place a bug into his stomach in something that still makes me cringe a little to this day.
Can I just interject here? Because I really want to like emphasize something about this movie that is very, very hard to sort of explain and home in on and replicate. You know, you say you're talking about how like the beginning of this movie has lots of questions, and like we all know what the Matrix is today, don't we? We all know what it is. It's been done to death now. And like, but when we saw this movie, it was a genuine mystery, wasn't it?
No, there was no explanation in any of the media. I mean, they literally marketed it on what is the Matrix.
That's right. I'll never forget like the signs out, the billboard signs and the signs on the buses that said, "What is the Matrix?" I saw the "What is the Matrix" sign on the buses when I was going to and from college. Before I saw the trailer for the film, I believe. Before I even saw the fucking trailer, man.
And that trailer, whilst it was awesome, was also incomprehensible. You had no clue what was going on.
No.
And that was the point. That no one knows, and no one can be told what the Matrix is. You need to experience it for yourself.
It is a very, very smart like narrative device to have it about this question, to have the characters asking what this question is at the beginning, because you want to know what the answer is, because you know it's an interesting idea. What is a Matrix? What is the Matrix? You know, you're asking, what is it? What does it mean? You know, when I think of the Matrix, I think of the Autobot creation Matrix of leadership. You know, that's what I used to, you know, think of it as. And yeah, like while this is all going on at the beginning of this movie, you just had no idea what was happening. No idea.
Feeding little things like, for instance, the fact that agents and Trinity can leap across streets from building to
building.
Why
can they do that? You're like, why can they do that? What's happening? What sort of movie is this? And then it goes to this, like, you know, after that insane. I mean, at this point, you and I were already watching anime. You know, so we'd already seen Hong Kong cinema. You know,
we were ready for this, so we were so ready.
Yeah. Like, you know, the Matrix is very famous for bringing Hong Kong cinema to the masses through let's say a Western movie. So like for us, it was like interesting. I think seeing these references, seeing these ideas that like. So I do remember watching it and feeling like I was watching like a live action anime more than anything else. But like, you get all those superpowers that are being shown at the beginning, and then it literally goes to complete normality, doesn't it? You know.
Yeah, the kind of the drab corporate environment that suddenly that most people could probably relate to quite easily. With Thomas Anderson stuck in a job where he hates his boss and he just wants to escape the humdrum life.
Yes, which is part of the question, isn't it? You think there's something wrong with your life? That's what she says to him.
Yeah,
isn't it? You think there's more. So, and then the next thing I know, then you know, he's like taken by these suited agents, and then suddenly, like like his mouth is covered. You know, which is that itself is like a body horror, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's body horror the way it happened. Like his skin like forms over his mouth.
It doesn't grow completely as well. You can see holes like where he's trying to stretch the skin and.
Yeah, it's really odd. And what's really interesting when you look at this sequence now, right, is that like when you watch it, if you put yourself into the mindset of someone who doesn't know what's going on, and you're watching this scene, you don't really understand how this how has that happened? What the hell is going on?
Yeah.
But what it really is happening with the story is that Agent Smith is manipulating Thomas Anderson's digital version of himself. You know what I mean? Which is so smart. It's so clever. Yeah. You know how that effect is achieved. One thing I do think is so impressive about this movie is that it's world building. While I am maybe, if I sat there and thought about it hard enough, I might be able to pick holes in it. It's almost faultless because in the end, the rules are as distinct as they are vague, that they can do anything any which way they want.
Yeah.
And that enables like really rich storytelling and really rich narrative ideas. Hence the fact like he has like a fucking bug injected inside of him.
Yeah, it starts off as like a bit of technology that then twists and turns into an organic creature that worms its way through his belly button.
Yeah, oh, it's horrible. And then when they suck it out in the car when he gets picked up by Trinity.
Yeah. And that's his kind of, because up to this point, he's thought that's just a bad dream or something, because he wakes up in bed and I was, oh my God, that thing's real.
Yeah.
So yeah, they remove the bug before he's taken to another abandoned building. A lot of abandoned buildings in this city, I'm going to be honest, to meet Morpheus, who offers him a choice. Now, this is a term that has been hijacked by all manner of different people and groups and organizations, but the concept of the choice of the red pill or the blue pill.
Mm.
Now, the red pill, he goes for it, which the red pill is the one where he chooses to wake up. He doesn't really know what that means, but he chooses it because he doesn't want to go back to his life.
Mm.
And you get that strange, twisted moment where the mirror comes alive, starts to climb over his hands, that reflective surface that crawls up to his face.
90s CGI galore.
Yeah. How was that a bit difficult with reflective surfaces for the old 90s CGI, didn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of reminiscent of like the T1000, isn't it?
Yeah, they did it better. The T1000. And then it pours down his throat with his scream turning into a digital dial-up sound.
I love that sound. When he like screams and then it goes down his throat and you get that like electronic dial-up tone that coming from his screams. Love that.
I think so. Like a couple of theories can be like made there, but the end of the day, the next moment he jolts awake inside a pod, which he pushes his way out, stretches the membrane around the outside of it. Realize he's clean shaven, he's smooth, doesn't have a scrap of hair on him. He's got pipes leading out of every single part of his body, including the back of his head. And as he forces his way out the pod, sitting up, he looks around, discovers that he's one of thousands, all lined up on giant skyscraper-esque towers, with lightning crackling until some tentacled robot, for want of a better term, suddenly accosts him, unscrews the cable from the back of his head, and flushes him. He's then rescued by some sort of strange arcade claw-grabbing machine, which kind of lifts him out of the water.
Yes.
And his final moments before he truly passes out, he sees the people that he met in the abandoned building, telling him that the reason his eyes hurt is because he's never used them before.
Yeah, I love that line.
Eventually, after some recuperation, he discovers that in actual fact he's now in the real world. That the Matrix is in actual fact a digital construct which the consciousness of the entirety of the human race currently not the entirety, the majority of the human race currently resides in, forming battery farms for AI robots that took over the world through necessity of the fact they needed power, and human bodies generate quite a significant amount of power. Now, the science of this can be a bit wishy-washy. I think that certain laws of thermodynamics do go out the window a little bit on that one, but I do appreciate the original idea was that they wanted to say that it was the human mind gave them processing power, but they were worried that the audience wouldn't understand that.
Bioelectricity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, in the end, like human beings run on energy to a degree, don't they? So, yeah.
It's one of those things. The suspension of disbelief's fine here. I can let that slide. It's a reason to enslave an entire race.
Yeah. I'm down with that.
And because they have the ability to plug straight into your mind, he also discovers they've got the ability to download martial arts straight into your head as well.
Aha.
Now, this is where I think this was the point in the movie when I was like, I am so fucking on board with this. When you see him being hit from everything from jiu-jitsu to drunken boxing.
I know kung fu.
This is it. That's an iconic term.
Yeah.
I think they're using that line, so like he's been doing it for 10 hours. He's a machine. Which may have certain sort of like foreshadowing for later. I don't know. But you get the demonstration between him and Morpheus where he shows off his skills to him in the dojo. And they have a fight, which I don't think lends that scene enough credit. It's an awesome fight.
It's a great scene. It's
Yes.
a great scene.
The awesome lines and dialogue they exchange whilst they're fighting. It's like, do you think my muscles...
the incredible like choreography, but also how like they all have like unique fighting styles as well.
You can see him just like trying out different ones as he's fighting, whilst Morpheus has a much more kind of refined and elegant sort of like...
Yes. Especially when he does like that flying, like jumping knee. He's like, his arms are outstretched, like a bird almost, isn't it? Yeah, there is an elegance there. But then there's that amazing... I'd love to know who came up with that amazing, like, come on, hand gesture he does, like we were all doing that to each other after this film.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, while Keanu / Thomas Anderson / Neo is like the main character in this film. I think many of us came out of the cinema thinking like Morpheus was the coolest fucking film character ever.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh
I will
my
be honest.
God.
I mean, I worked in opticians at the time, and I had to be talked out of buying a set of the pince nez that he wears.
Yeah.
Because Mark, you're not going to pull it off. I reckon I can pull it off. No, Mark, you won't be able to pull it off. Okay.
Did you buy them or not?
No, I didn't get them in the end.
Oh,
They were cool as well.
yeah.
Now, after this incredible fight, we get introduced to the jump program, which is meant to show the point which you can truly manipulate reality, where you can jump from building to building, which Morpheus demonstrates with effortlessness. And when Neo attempts it, not so much. He slams down onto the asphalt a couple of times, actually, I believe, because reality bends, springs him back up, and slaps him back down on it all over again. Now, when he comes out of the program, he discovers he's bleeding on the inside of his mouth, and it's established that when you get hurt in the Matrix, your body makes it real. Which, once again, one of those things, it's just like, fair enough, okay, fine, I'll accept that. Up to a point. Now, Morpheus at this point takes Neo to meet the Oracle. Now, this is a figure that's been giving guidance to the humans that have escaped from the enslavement. And humans, as it is now, live in the last city, which is known as Zion. And she is one of the helpers from within the Matrix that's been giving them prophecies and attributing my apologies, let's try and say this word, attributing them destinies, for want of a better term. It's at this point that Neo discovers that he isn't the one they've been seeking. Apparently the one is meant to unite humanity, take on the robots and win.
Well, it's very interesting how they do this, isn't it? It's very interesting how this whole sequence of events happens. Because, like, the Oracle sort of, like, insinuates that she's going to tell him what he needs to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And she says to him, how does she put it? She says something along the lines of, and you are going to ask me a question, and you already know the answer, she says to him. She, like, gaslights him almost, doesn't she?
Yeah, and he goes, I'm
like,
not the one, and she goes, bingo. But she doesn't answer the question. She just...
No. She never answers the question specifically.
She just says, that's the question you were going to ask.
Yeah. This is really cool. I really like this.
It's like the whole the vase thing sequence where she goes, I'll watch the vase. And he goes, what vase? Knocks it over. And he goes, oh, I'm so sorry. She goes, no, what's really going to bake your noodle is, would you have knocked the vase over if I hadn't told you? And that's literally in a bottle exactly what this movie is for her advice to him. That she wasn't telling him what he was. She was telling him what he needed to know.
That's right. It must be said, that this film is very smart, very smartly written. We can critique the other movies another time. I dare say we will get round to them. But this one, within, like, the confines of its 2-hour runtime, going to see this film thinking it's a one film, one-off, like, within its universe, like, it's very smartly written. Not, like, nothing wasted, very clear, almost everything with intent, very impressive piece of, like, writing this film is. Very impressive. I mean, when we saw it at the cinema in, like, 1999, we our minds were blown. Like, this was like seeing a film, a live-action film, a Hollywood live-action film, let's say, of this magnitude, of this spectacle, of this scale, but with also these, like, philosophical themes that you would only really ever apply to art films, I want to say. Maybe television by great filmmakers. Lynch has always been one to incorporate philosophical themes into his work, for example. Anime as well. We'd never seen anything like this in this film. And when we walked out of it, like, we're just like, what the fuck did we just watch? But when you go back and watch it now and, like, really pay attention to what's being said, knowing what the story is, I think there's a lot to admire. There really is a lot to admire about this movie. It's very succinct, very, very succinct. I don't think it gets the credit it deserves for that.
Absolutely. As I say, I don't think there was any intention of a sequel at this point. They just wanted to make a polished action movie
You have to wonder, don't you? It's something to get into when we talk about the later movies in a later episode, I think. You know.
This is true. Now, at this point, we also learn that Morpheus received a destiny as well from the Oracle, and that she told him he would be the one to find the one.
Mm-hmm.
We also attribute there's also allusions to the fact that Trinity's got a destiny, but she's not quite ready to share it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whilst this is taking place, whilst they're visiting the Oracle, we discover that one of the team of people that work under Morpheus, a gentleman by the name of Cypher, who's got a classic villain moustache and soul patch, has actually been in communication with the agents and is intending to sell out the team with the reward of being put back into the Matrix with no memory of anything and just to live a nice life.
I like this concept. This is very good. This is very, very good storytelling because, what better reason would there be to want to lie to yourself and be put back into, the Matrix? The truth is, the real world is uncomfortable. It is dark. It is dangerous. Running away from the machines constantly in their dark, dank ship. They are literally eating slop, which is like, isn't it like remade feces or something like that? It's something quite.
Yeah, it is just sort of like, it just looks like runny oatmeal, but
yeah, it's really awful.
Yeah,
when you could be lying to yourself, living in a simulation where everything feels like it's real and you wouldn't know any better, and eating steak dinners and using the situation as a way to strike a deal to get an even better life, as what Cypher is trying to do with the agents. I like this arc a lot. It's doesn't feel shoehorned in at all whatsoever. I think the right person in the wrong situation would definitely do this.
Yeah, it's an understandable sort of like motive.
Yeah. It made me think. Do you know what? I'm not sure if I think this guy's an arse for doing this. I really didn't think that. I really struggled with this, with his motivations. I just honestly couldn't decide whether or not
he was just someone who was. I don't even know if weak is the right term. He just He had enough. And...
Yeah. I like this a lot. I like this arc a lot. It's very good.
As it is, the agents start to manipulate reality around them bit by bit, and this gets demonstrated through the aspect of deja vus, which they don't really go back into this much in the future. But the idea that if you experience deja vu, it's them rewriting a portion of code in the Matrix to change something.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Which was I always liked that. I was surprised they never utilised that more going forwards.
Yes.
And they've split the team up, and they lose the first of the team, which would be Mouse, I believe his name is, the young boy, who goes down in a hail of bullets to the police officers. And Cypher gets separated from the rest of the team. Now, as they're trying to escape the building, Agent Smith realizes they are in the walls of the building, escaping down to the basement level. And to prevent him from snatching Neo, Morpheus lets out a fucking war cry. And I mean, I'm not wrong, am I? He full on cried. You see him charging up like Super Saiyan style.
It doesn't like he runs in slow motion.
No, but it's when he's behind the wall and when he kind of goes, and then he comes through the wall.
Yeah.
And and gets into it with him just so the others can escape. And this is a fucking brutal fight. Like at one point, he smashes his head through a toilet. And it's all. But at the end of the day, he is outclassed by Agent Smith. He is.
This is something I think another aspect of the storytelling in this film that's very, very smart. Very, very smart. This is all like character building, isn't it, for Neo? Mm-hmm. Early on in the movie, like, it is insinuated that these agents are like so powerful, final boss level powerful. You run. That's right. They say no one's ever survived. A fight with them. I'm pretty sure this is like Morpheus goes, but you will. Like his faith in Neo is like so incredible that he thinks he will be able to do it.
Yeah.
And like they build this up so much. Obviously, Trinity like runs away and like nearly dies. In like the first 5 minutes of the movie. She just stop and fight, and like there's all the sequences up until this point when they're manipulating the Matrix and whatever. And like, it's been built up to this point, and then Morpheus literally goes like in on him, doesn't he? And like
Yep.
there's a few situations later on in the film as well where this happens, and in the later movies, where like just anyone going up against an agent in this movie, like there's tension, isn't there? The tension is so high
Yeah.
because it's as a great action movie should be, like a worse action movie. I mean, there's like, okay, fine. There are action movies that you watch, right, where you have the superpower hero that kills 1,000 enemies, and the enjoyment is not in the tension. It's not about the tension, is it? It's about how they're dispatched and admiring the choreography and the cool fight sequences, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this film, not only does it have that, it has the dramatic tension as well that makes you worry for the life of these characters.
Yeah.
And many situations you do wonder, are they going to die? They do die.
Yeah.
As well.
This ain't like sort of Arnie's Commando, where he is just literally walking around, sort of like mowing down wave upon wave of sort of like guards in some like mansion that he's invading or anything. This is actually, you are much more invested in these characters than anything you would have got from those sort of style of movies. In my opinion, anyway.
No, definitely, 100% with you. Like I said, they're different, aren't they? You watch some because you just want to watch. You want to watch Arnie in that power fantasy with that chain gun mowing down like 40 soldiers who can't hit him for shit. Like
cover. What is cover?
It's just different. It's just different. That's one of the reasons what makes this movie so successful. It's because you do feel the tension, because you do start to care. We cared about Morpheus, didn't we, in this movie?
Yes.
Because he was cool, obviously. But there's also, I think, the blind faith that he puts into Neo, even though Neo just sort of decides, well, I'm not the one, so this is all a waste of time. But then Morpheus is still putting his faith into him.
But the thing is, I don't think he's even able to tell Morpheus because he's afraid of breaking his faith.
Yeah, is that why? Yeah.
Morpheus is so devout that he can't bring himself to break him by saying, she told me I wasn't. Or his misunderstanding of what his destiny was.
No. What Morpheus says to him is, what was said for you was for you alone. Doesn't even ask what was said, and he doesn't tell him. Yeah. And like, I think that level of like belief that he has in Neo, and the fact that Neo has just been told he's not the one, and the film is trying to fool you into thinking that Neo isn't the one, sort of increases the tension, increases the drama around Morpheus believing in Neo so much that when Morpheus is like ready to sacrifice himself for Neo in various points in this movie, like it raises the tension even more because you're fearful, aren't you? Like, and there's that belief that he can't win, and there's the fact that he's doing it for someone that's not the one in the first place potentially, and he's doing it because of his self-belief. And I think that just makes him a really visually powerful character. I think that's it makes us care for him even more. Very smart, very clever.
Now, one thing I actually have forgotten to address with regards to the agents in terms of one of their powers is the fact that they have the ability to manifest in the body of anyone who is logged into the main server of the Matrix, anyone who's within their farm, so to speak. So they can't do it to our heroes. However, if someone in the Matrix sees Morpheus or Neo or so on and so forth, they will instantly start to warp and twist and become one of the agents.
Mm-hmm.
And then once if by any chance the agent gets killed, they will then revert back to the body that they possessed. It's a really sinister ability that gets used over and over again through the later movies as well.
Which means that like
everyone is a threat. Eyes, if anyone sees you, you've been seen. And now with the separation of the team, Trinity takes Morpheus. No, my apologies. Trinity takes Neo, along with Apoc and Switch, and escapes the building while Cypher makes his own way back to their escape point, which is a ringing telephone, and he logs out first. Then he takes this opportunity to viciously murder several people.
Awful, isn't it? This is awful.
It is. It's just first he dispatches Dozer, who's one of the homegrown Zionites.
Yeah.
Followed by wrenching out the logging cables for Apoc and Switch. And he does this whilst on the phone to Trinity.
Oh, it's awful.
And this is a haunting scene. This is one scene where she looks into Switch's eyes and says, "If you have anything you wish to share with Switch, I would suggest you say it now." And you just see Switch look up and go, "Not like this,"
Yeah, it's awful.
and then her body just collapses. And whilst this movie is the characters that are there, I mean, I do feel that some of these characters didn't get any time to shine. They were just there maybe to die. But at the same time, you do feel that all these characters had stories as well. And it is a little bit.
It's the brutality. I think it's the brutality of the scenario that I think does it, isn't it? You know, it is so brutal and so sudden. You know how they're killed. Like they are like wasted deaths, aren't they? It's not exactly like they charged with their guns blazing, trying to sacrifice themselves. You know,
they died from their perception, and like an invisible.
Yeah.
Traitor. Yeah.
It's just brutal. It's absolutely brutal.
And this is a phenomenal scene for Trinity in terms of you just see, because up until this point she's been cold and emotionless. I mean, she's shown some caring elements towards Neo, wanting to guide him, but not too much. She wants to see.
She keeps her distance. She keeps her distance, which is revealed. You know, when you look at her overall character arc, it's very obvious why she does it.
But this is the first scene in which you see emotion with, and you see the pain. It's just she transfers it very well.
Yeah.
And at the last moment, they're saved because he didn't finish the job when it came to Tank, who returns back with his Tesla gun.
Yeah.
I always love that line. Is believe it or not, you're still gonna burn, you son of a bitch. And everyone logs out and they head back to the ship, the Nebuchadnezzar, so that they can plan what needs to be done next. Now, all captains of ships, Morpheus included, have codes for the main database of Zion. And the agents are now torturing him with the intent of accessing these codes. And they realize that for the greater good, they need to wrench his cable out and let him die. However, Neo flashes back to a small piece of information that the Oracle transferred to him that said there'd be a point when you'd have to make a decision, when you'd hold the life of Morpheus in your hand. And at this point, Neo decides, I want to save him. He ended up there because he believed in me, even though I'm not the one.
It's his guilt, isn't it? It's his guilt that makes him do this. I
can't let him die for me, believing that I'm the one. It's just, he couldn't let himself do it. Which leads to that phenomenally awesome scene of we need guns. Lots of guns. And then rows upon rows of like different types of weaponry springs out, and we get to the government lobby scene. Which is so over the top. It is so much in terms of like the amount of bullets in this scene, the amount of gunfire.
I can remember seeing this in the cinema very well, very well. Like it was like a time and a place, you know.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just wow.
Like we'd never seen anything like this before in terms of an action sequence.
Yeah.
Just everything from the way he slow motion walks in through those revolving, opens his jacket to reveal just numerous machine guns and pistols and whatnot. Palm strikes the guard, and then they just start to go to town. And you can see at this point he is fully embraced whatever role he feels he's meant to be. Because they are mowing down people that essentially are innocents, but at the same time they're still a threat. Because any one of these people could turn it into an agent, and they have to dispatch them. So, yeah, all of this is so stylishly cool. It then leads into them fighting their way through, killing everybody, getting into the lift, laying a bomb, and then shooting the cables that support the lift to fling them up to the roof, where they come face to face with one of the agents. And it's at this point when the agent opens fire on Neo that he starts to manifest abilities that later get described as you move like them. And this gives him doubts as to whether or not he's not the one. He's not quite sure now. It also leads to that brilliant line of Trinity headshotting the agent with dodge this. Which is just brilliant. That's one of the best sort of like, I believe there's a trope called click hello, which is when two people are talking and someone clicks the hammer of a gun as a signal of saying hello, so to speak. And it's just the way that you hear that click and she goes, dodge this. It's just brilliant. Now, they managed to Trinity downloads the manual for a helicopter, fortunately, and we get the escape sequence for Morpheus, where Neo comes down with a Gatling gun, because why the fuck not? Opens up on the room, and Morpheus snaps his handcuffs, stands up, and runs towards the window, gets shot through the leg, and Neo has to leap from the helicopter to meet him, to catch him in midair, as Trinity pulls the helicopter away and starts carrying him across the city. This action sequence, I'm not going to go into details what happens here. It ends up with all three of them escaping an exploding helicopter as it slams into the side of a skyscraper. Oh my god!
What an incredible sequence this is.
Yes.
Like the visuals are just it's the perspective. For me, the most memorable shot is that shockwave.
Oh, the ripple across the building.
Yeah, and Trinity like hanging and swinging towards the fucking camera. Oh my god, it's just incredible, and obviously the shot below, which I think has like a lot of like thematic aspirations as well, where like when Neo like dives out and grabs Morpheus midair, the shot goes below them, and you see them sort of grab hold of each other.
Yeah, the whole kind of like Morpheus making a leap of faith and Neo being the one to save him.
Yeah, I think that's really potent with the because what this film is building up obviously is Neo as like a Jesus Christ style figure, and I think that's obviously and in his hero's journey, and I think that is like one of like the first like really important, obviously apart when someone says that you move like them, but then when he like catches Morpheus at this moment from the leap of faith. It's like a superhuman feat, and like, I think it's just sort of shown really, like through storytelling that like Neo is approaching oneness, let's say, and that Morpheus, and Morpheus' faith is being rewarded as well.
Yeah,
it's great. It's great.
With this in mind, the three of them now escape and make their way down to a subway station, where unfortunately a hobo is sleeping off to one side, who, as we look at him, he starts to twist and switch until he turns into the visage of Agent Smith. Morpheus and Trinity manage to escape through the ringing telephone. However, the handset gets shot just as Neo is meant to escape, and rather than running, he pauses for a moment, turns, and squares up to Agent Smith. Which leads to that line, he's starting to believe. Another immensely awesome fight sequence. This is just a great sequence of fighting with the two of them just exchanging blows back and forth, proving that they are actually more or less almost on the same level in terms of their abilities. And it's one thing I'll say about this movie is they had that concept of bullet time, which they utilised a couple of times throughout. They sprinkled it liberally through this movie, but they didn't overuse it. And the sequence of them diving towards each other, firing guns whilst deflecting the other person's hand before they slam down on the ground with their guns both empty that is peak for me. We eventually result in the two of them on the tracks for the train, where Neo manages to flip out the way at the last second, leading to Smith being crushed by the train. But this barely slows the bastard down, because the train screeches to a halt, the doors open, and someone else has turned into Smith now, and they're still in pursuit. And we get a chase sequence throughout the city, where numerous agents morphing into people as Neo runs. The music is pumping at this point. It's like I think there's just one scene where he just jumps off of a fire escape in slow motion. And the way the trumpets come in and everything is fucking brilliant.
Great. It's a great score.
Yeah. Until he almost gets to the telephone, he kicks open the door and comes face to face with Smith, who's already got his gun drawn, and then proceeds to unload the magazine in his chest, apparently killing him. Now, in the real world, Trinity is leaning over Neo, and we just realise at this point that there's a ticking clock on this. Whilst this has all been taking place, Sentinels, which is the name for these tentacle robots, have been getting closer to the ship with the intention of slaughtering everyone inside it. Now, they have an EMP which they can fire off, which would cripple these robots instantly, but it would also cripple the technology within the ship and kill Neo. That he has to log out correctly, otherwise his mind will be lost. And to this end, they need him to answer that phone before the Sentinels manage to penetrate the hull. And it's during this time that Trinity finally confesses what her destiny was the one that was given to her by the Oracle, and that was that she was destined to fall in love with the One. And that's why he can't be dead, because she loves him. I feel this may come out a touch out of left field. I mean, how much have they interacted? She has kept her distance from the majority of it, but nonetheless.
I mean, it's not exactly like they have like tons and tons of chemistry on screen either.
Not like the second one where they are literally banging like rabbits from the first 5-10 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, like this film has references to Alice in Wonderland very early on with the rabbit hole
White
and whatnot.
Rabbit,
And like it's obviously got like lots of references to like lots of religious iconography, religious ideas, Jesus Christ story arc and whatever. And Neo, even though like the world exists in a realistic fashion in a sense because it's all told through science, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is this supernatural element to it as well.
A mystical kind of.
A mystical, that's correct. That's the right. A mystical element to it as well because the one just has the ability to, do what he can do. Is there a particular reason for it in this movie specifically? Not really.
He's
just that
Neo simply
believes.
A Messiah-like figure.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Morpheus just believes in him. It's about belief. This goes back to when he speaks to the Oracle, and the Oracle gaslights him, right, for it more or less, and he doesn't want to believe he's the one, or maybe doesn't believe he's the one, or doesn't have the confidence yet, doesn't accept the reality yet, and when she says to him, "You're going to say that you're," she doesn't say to him, "You're not the one." She lets him decide for himself.
Yeah.
As you say, there's a mystical element in it, and I think that. I mean, the giant robots harvesting humans for energy. It's not science fiction. It's fantasy, really. Let's be honest. So, like, this is like a science fiction fantasy story overall. But like the religious references, the god, the religious iconography, the religious narrative tropes, give it the mysticism that you kind of have to, like a fairy tale, and you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. I think of certain aspects of it, and I think that her falling in love with him and vice versa is kind of part of that. It's kind of like a prince and a princess falling in love in a Disney fairy tale. It just happens because they are two characters that are to do it, and that's it. And within the context of this movie, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
The truth is that a lot of these characters, like, don't have much characterization. Morpheus probably has the most because he has the most distinct, personality, and that is based around his belief, his blind faith. Trinity is, like, as you say, quite cold and collected and reserved because of the fact that she's been told she's going to fall in love with the one, which I think is quite effective. But Neo himself isn't really a character. It's a bit of a blank slate. So, I don't know, like, is this film about deep, complex characterization, or is it about martial arts and deep philosophical and deep science fictional ideas?
It's the latter, I believe.
Exactly. So for me personally, regarding what you're saying about them falling in love with each other, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. I don't need another half an hour of character exposition and characterization just so I can say, oh, they fall in love because they do, because the film's shown me now. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, just showing them on a training program having a picnic or something.
Yeah. Oh, I don't need. I just don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need it. This film is tight and succinct enough.
No,
and another half.
He wants to tell. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not important. So, and like I said, I kind of view it like a fairy tale almost in that regard, and I'm fine with that. That's fine.
Well, quite literally like a fairy tale. When she kisses him, she resurrects.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, why? It's fine. Yep. It's fine.
And with that in mind, once she realizes he's breathing again, she tells him to get up. And he stands up, and through his resurrection, he now apparently seems to perceive the code of the Matrix. He can see beyond just the basic. He can, or basic in more than one term, actually, if you excuse the pun. He can now perceive the world around him, and he can manipulate it. At which point, the three agents pull their guns, and we get that iconic scene of them opening fire and him just holding a hand out and stopping the bullets.
He doesn't even need. Well, this is great, isn't it? The foreshadowing.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
well you're saying when I need to, I'll be able to dodge bullets.
I'm saying you won't need to.
Yeah, this is it. It's
God,
just,
it's so good, so good.
and this leads to Agent Smith just snapping and just charging him, and we get that incredible sequence where he just calmly, methodically, just counters every single one of his strikes. At one point, turning sideways and just with a single hand fighting him.
Yeah.
Where you can see it's almost like a man testing out his abilities and going, "Oh, so this is what I can do now."
He's almost almost looking at his hands, going, "Whoa."
Yeah. And after everything that's come to this point, you're so fucking ready for this. You want to see this. You want to see what the one can
It's
do.
been built up all the way through the film by this point, isn't it? You know,
Followed by that standing psychic where he just launches him down the corridor.
That's great. You've seen that he like Morpheus, who literally is so much more adept a fighter than Neo earlier on in the film, that Neo can hardly even touch him. He sort of gets the advantage, doesn't he, towards the end of their training session. But like Morpheus is presented as this like incredibly skilled fighter, and then he can't stand up to an agent, you know. And that moment when Neo, I know, yes, you have the Jesus Christ moment, fine, whatever, the resurrection moment, fine, whatever. You know, when Neo is literally able to stand up to an agent, and I don't just mean defeat them one-on-one, to the point where the agent Smith has no chance.
Yeah,
right?
There's nothing he can do.
He cannot do anything. It's so cathartic, and it really is like all the foreshadowing, the dialogue, the character relationships, everything is leading to this moment, and it is like there's a reason why the hero's journey storyline works. You know, it's because this moment, and it doesn't have to be him, like the hero, like being able to fucking one punch the villain. It doesn't always have to be an antagonist, you know, or like a human being. It can be a personal, you know,
personal emotional
journey.
Victory, or
it doesn't have to be a fight.
But it is nice when it's a static sidekick down a corridor.
that kick, man. Because there's something that I found out when I was looking at today, actually. It's really interesting looking at this now, is that obviously, like, the actors in this film went through, like, months and months and months of training.
Oh, yeah, they started them, I think they started them 3 years beforehand in terms of the general fitness training first to get them ready for the kind of training that be needed later, yeah.
And they all hurt themselves really badly. And Keanu Reeves hurt his spine, didn't he? And he had to have an operation so he could walk. and and they actually had to film a lot of his scenes out of order because of that. And it also changed his fighting style, which is why through a lot of the film he mainly uses his hands. And thinking about it now, it's the fact that the powerful moment where he stands there and just parry, you know, all of Agent Smith's attacks, and then just kicks him. I think is actually even more cathartic because you don't see him kick that much in the film, really, to that extent. And then when he finally does it, and then he lifts his legs up, isn't it? And
he does that Asian cinema thing where he kind of twists it sideways as if to hold the pose.
Style, isn't it? Yeah, and holds. It's you know, it is. As I say, I hate to use the word again. It is cathartic. You know, it's so cathartic.
And then he does a fatality where he charges, dives into Agent Smith's chest, who turns around. You start to see him writhe, and his body swells and twists up until finally he explodes, leaving Neo stood, flexing apparently.
Yeah.
And with his eyes closed, a ripple shifting away from him as he deletes Agent Smith.
Literally, he doesn't even need to fight him. He literally just just dives inside his body and just blows him up from the inside. I mean, it's insanity, really, isn't it? It's just absolute insanity.
And you do get the cherry on top of him, just the way in which he opens his eyes.
Yes,
up towards great. The two agents, the two which look at each other, then fucking scarper.
Yeah, it's great.
Now, whilst he's in the middle of just kind of coming to terms with the fact that he's got these new abilities, Trinity screams and tells him to get to the phone.
Yeah, it's while all this amazing cool shit is going on, there's that timer that's ticking in the real world at the same time. I mean, this is great, isn't it? You know, the tension going through this. Oh my god, the dual narrative that's running at the same time.
Oh my god. I fucking love that scene. It's almost ludicrous, but the scene where after Neo's been shot, where it snaps to Tank and Morpheus, both just staring into the screen. Tank's looking at Morpheus with his hand on the EMP, whilst Morpheus is just staring at the screen, realizing that Neo's dead. With lasers flashing around as the Sentinels are tearing into his ship, and you can just see his entire world just fell apart.
Yeah,
because the person he thought was the one has just died, and
he still believes at that point.
Yeah.
I think he's still like willing him on, isn't he?
Yeah. And eventually, it's very close, but he does escape just as they deploy the EMP, wipe out the Sentinels. And then there's almost nothing. It's just that moment where you realise with Trinity and Neo looking into each other's eyes. And then we smash cut to a scene, or a conversation even, over code, of Neo talking. And you realise he's giving the machines a warning.
Mm-hmm.
And it pulls back and he says, I'm going to show these people a world beyond this one, to paraphrase. And he steps out the phone box, looks around, then stares up into the sky. The camera pulls back, and the final shot is Neo flying up into the sky towards the camera. At which point the music drops on Wake Up by Rage Against the Machine. And this,
what a choice! What a choice!
Yeah, that's a fucking banger before it was in this movie. And this movie elevated it even more so.
Yeah.
And we will get to the music in a minute. Yeah, don't you worry, we will get into the music. But this is the thing, you got out this movie and you were so fucking you didn't want it to be the end because you've only been given a taste of what he was, like what he's capable of now. And you wanted more. You wanted to see where this story goes next. It is, to my mind, it's one of the most perfect 90s action movies.
It is, yeah. I mean, would you say it's a perfect movie?
No, it's not a perfect movie, but...
What flaws are there in this movie? Tell me.
Only minor things, like I pointed out with regards to the characterization between Trinity and the Neo,
okay.
And also the special... They're minor. I mean, at the end of the day, I still consider this as close to as perfect as you possibly...
Yeah, I don't consider those flaws. Like, I don't like counting CGI. Dated CGI is a flaw, personally. I just don't.
That's just of the era, yeah.
Yeah, at the time, no one thought that. And like I said, the characterization between of Trinity and Neo, my own novel, Neo. To me, that's not a flaw. I mean, like, if anything, actually, I actually think that like Neo's characterization in this movie is quite refreshing, because up until this point, our action movie stars were
they've always come in confident. They've already
Bruce Willis, yeah, Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone was still making action movies at this point. He was in an action movie written by the Wachowskis, Assassins, ironically, before this.
Oh, I remember that.
With Banderas, yeah. It was still happening. This is even before Brendan Fraser was like kicking ass in the Mummy, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So I think that like him, I mean, nowadays Keanu Reeves is something of a gem that is appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point in like 1999, between 1997 and 1999, when they were making this movie, he had come off the back of a slight career resurgence, hadn't he, with Speed, which he's very good in. But
Break and
that was a bit before that. But what I'm saying is that he was and is still to this day like relatively typecast, because while he is like quite charismatic, he is quite a limited actor. Let's say that's not being horrible. It's just being truthful. I like Keanu Reeves as much as the next person, but he's not like able to disappear into a character. Say, Christian Bale is, or anyone else. Joaquin Phoenix, for example. He's not Joaquin Phoenix, is he? That's for sure. But him just being like an unassuming, normal, like worker person who actually goes whoa when like cool stuff happens, makes him quite relatable, in my opinion.
No, it makes him almost like he's a very vulnerable hero to begin with, and
yes.
You see growth. You see so much growth in him.
Power level growth, not characterization growth.
Yeah.
Because that's like, again, it's the same thing. That what do you want from this movie? I mean, if you're the kind of person that doesn't like action movies at all, and I don't watch action movies, I only want to watch character dramas because I'm a toppy-nosed bastard who's so arrogant and pretentious. I don't like films like this. If that's you, then you are going to pick flaws in this movie. And me personally, I like to watch character-filled, deep, philosophical dramas, but I also like to watch action movies as well. And watching an action movie that sort of is like capturing elements from both, that is telling like a thought-provoking story, as well as having like a kick-ass like narrative as well, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with there being, the characterization on screen is fine, but there's not much development, is there? That's what it is. There's not much development, let's say, in characterization in the story. But I don't think there needs to be. It doesn't need to be. It's not what the film's about.
Well, I think that's something that comes out of the usage of like the Asian cinema angle, where
Mhm.
a lot of Asian stories do start with sometimes a relatively powerless character that becomes
Don't
stronger.
you mean you're talking about shonens? You mean specifically?
Yeah.
And martial
Shonens
arts movies, not Asian stories. You
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, obviously, yeah. And to that end, you do see that it's like the comparison of the likes of Goku versus Superman. Where
Yes.
Superman is an established character, he's got his power set, and he's just powerful. He doesn't get stronger. Whilst Goku, every arc, he is getting progressively more powerful.
Yeah.
And that's something we see in this, that you see the power level increasing in him as he gets more and more familiar and understanding of who he is.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, do you remember where you were the first time you watched this movie, man?
Well, like I said, this is something that rediscovering this movie for the podcast. I've been really been thinking about actually is like the time this movie came out and like the effect it had on all of us. It was like I was 16 when this movie came out, so it was like the perfect time for me personally. It's a film that's about breaking the chains of control, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's like one of the core philosophical themes, isn't it? It's like somewhat inspired by Plato's allegory of the cave, which I have read, and as is the next film we're going to be talking about in this podcast, and about like whether or not the realities before us are real, whether or not what we see is real.
Yeah, what is the definition of reality?
Exactly. It's asking those like philosophical questions, but wrapped up in like a science fiction extravaganza with like a complex, layered science fiction narrative. It's in media res, obviously. All the drama of the science fiction elements has already happened, hasn't it? Because of like humanity being destroyed, the sky being scorched, and whatnot. And we're discovering that in real time. And like I said, to see like a film that's just multi-layered in so many ways, it was like an incredible.
It's incredible to have a movie that matched up to the hype of its promotion.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. That didn't happen very often.
The stuff that had come beforehand, we were prepared for the possibility that it might just be a disappointing movie.
I want to say this came out the same year as The Phantom Menace, which, many of us saw at the cinema, and like many of us, including myself, like over the years, I've sort of softened to The Phantom Menace, I would probably say. I don't know, I come and go. 99, yeah. And so same year. And like, but The Phantom Menace is a movie that like, I think most of its fan base, maybe most of the people that like Star Wars, sort of forced themselves to like.
Well, Stockholm syndrome.
yeah, and it didn't live up to the hype.
No,
it didn't.
But what could?
Yeah, of course. But this did. This did though. Obviously, its sequels didn't live up to the hype.
No.
And this came out the same year. It's dark. It's serious. It respects its audience and its audience's intelligence. With its like story. I mean, like films. Mainstream cinema, like I said, Dark City, the film we're going to be talking about in the second part of this episode, is as dark and as serious as this movie. It doesn't have the martial arts. I'd say it's probably darker and more serious, but it didn't make the money this film did, and like for The Matrix itself, maybe it's because of the marketing, maybe it had better filmmakers, however, what led to it.
I do feel Matrix was a lot more stylized than Dark City.
Of course.
I mean, it's dripping off this movie in terms of every angle, every shot.
It's all that influence from Eastern cinema and anime.
Yeah. And also the music as well.
Yes, well, I was just about to get to that.
Yeah.
Just talking about where I was and where this came out, as I sort of mentioned earlier on, if you go now and look online, you can find comparisons of this movie and like anime, such as Ghost in the Shell, and they'll overlay scenes from this movie and various anime scenes, including Ghost in the Shell, maybe Akira, together, so you can see how the Wachowskis were literally paying reverence to this cult animation movement that had been going on for the entire of the 90s. Now, to yourself and me, it wasn't a cult thing. We were regularly into it. We were into anime, we were into manga and a lot, but the mainstream was not, compared to today, especially, whereas anime is very mainstream today. So, I'd love to know whether or not when we saw this film, I do feel like, for example, when they're fighting and their hands start blurring, like Fist of the North Star, and like the green and all the green writing, I always felt like it was referencing like Ghost in the Shell and whatnot. And the cyberpunk aesthetic was referencing Akira and whatnot. But like, I feel like it was probably communicating to us on a subliminal level with its anime influences more than anything else. When you go back and look now, you think, holy shit! Like, it's almost like plagiarism if you watch these scene overlays.
And you can also see the classic archetypes in the characters to a degree, with like some Morpheus and Trinity being very similar to like characters from anime in general, in the way in which they hold and act and communicate with the main character.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Morpheus is just like the crazed fucking
like devout
wizard.
kind of.
Yeah, devout wizard, really. I suppose maybe. But what I'm saying anyway, sorry, is that this movie sort of like accumulated like multiple cultural zeitgeists and put them together and just blew it up, right? So we've got anime, we've got like Hong Kong Asian action movies, which you were always into, weren't you? When we were kids. I liked martial arts movies, but I think I sort of veered more towards the more serious ones. I liked Bruce Lee, especially when I was younger.
I was more Jackie Chan when I was
You were Jackie
kid.
Chan, that's right. You were more Jackie Chan. So the slightly more outlandish, slightly crazier martial arts movies you were into, which this film obviously, helped broaden its appeal, and that's why we've got loads of crazy martial arts movies after this. And as you were just about to say as well, music as well was very important to this movie. This was a very important, I remember you had the soundtrack on CD, didn't you?
Yeah.
I swear you did. And say I've got a list for you now. You got Marilyn Manson, Rock is Dead, Bad Blood by Ministry, Dracula by Rob Zombie, My Own Summer, Shoved by Deftones, Du Hast by Rammstein, obviously Wake Up by Rage Against the Machine. This is like a who's who of like alternative metal from the 90s, all like in the soundtrack. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, there you go. Leave You Far Behind by Lunatic Calm.
And Club to Death by Rob D.
I was going to get to that in a second.
Yes, I'll give you.
Wait, hold tight. Minefields by the Prodigy was in it as well. I remember being in the club.
Yeah.
Oh, Keith, what a legend! And then, of course, there is probably the most iconic piece of like licensed music from this film, which is Club to Death by Rob D, the Kurian Mino mix. I mean, this is a song that I remember you loving. You used to always ask it to be played at parties, if I remember correctly.
I fucking loved it. There was something about this. I mean, I used to listen to it on my CD player, like when I was walking around. It's something about just walking down the street to that music.
It's a good walking song, isn't it?
It really is. It's just such a good song.
Yeah.
I mean, I listen to that and that takes me straight back to teenage years.
Oh, yeah. This is it, I think maybe because of how the sequels have diluted the legacy of this movie, that I'd forgotten how much I appreciate this movie and how important this movie was to me as a kid, As I say, before we recorded this episode, I said to Mark, can you remember where you were when you watched this movie? And what did you say, Mark? What was your answer?
I said I was with you, man.
He said, I was in the cinema with you. Which I'd completely forgotten about. I knew I'd seen it with my dad. I couldn't remember if Adam was with us or not. I imagine he might have been. I'm not sure. But then it was you. You were there, for fuck's sake. And what I remember very well, like watching the movie, being completely blown away by it. And then coming outside, standing outside the Southend Odeon, and all just looking at each other and just going, what the fuck was that?
Yeah. You weren't any preparation for it. We'd never seen an action movie before. And it changed everything in terms of action cinema after that point. Literally, it felt like every other action movie after that point was in some fashion or another ripping off The Matrix.
Absolutely.
Whether it be the likes of the Underworld series that followed shortly after, which pretty much Matrix with werewolves and vampires. Or The One, or Equilibrium, or all 100 other movies that all borrowed that kind of slick and stylized kind of martial arts style.
I think Equilibrium's actually quite an underrated movie. Actually, I quite like that movie.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. I mean, the pistol whipping
Yeah.
scene is fucking incredible. So
That's really, really cool. Like the Underworld franchise took fucking shitloads from this. There's another film that was heavily influenced by this though. That's obviously Chris Nolan's Inception, which he himself admitted to. He said that like Inception was sort of billed as like it's a heist thriller, really, isn't it? It hasn't obviously got the kung fu fighting of the Matrix, but it was billed as like an action movie with the kind of multi-layered plot that would, inspire conversation like the Matrix. He wanted to sort of harken back to the days when like smart action movies were made. And let's be honest, are smart action movies even made anymore by mainstream cinema?
Not on the same level as like this.
No. This is definitely like capturing lightning in a bottle, somehow, because they never managed to top it afterwards, did they? The Wachowskis never.
No, I mean they tried, but I feel that they probably didn't expect to have to make sequels to this.
I do wonder that as well, because it is like a complete story, really. I mean, maybe the payoff is seeing Neo like go up to the big robot at the end and punching them like whatever and killing them, which is obviously not what we got. Maybe that's what we might have imagined, or that's what we should have got. I don't really know, but like, I know that when we saw this movie at the cinema, I sort of envisioned there being more. Can you say the same thing?
It left it open, like you were getting a taste.
Did you watch this thinking to yourself, "There's going to be a sequel"?
I walked out, and in the back of my mind, yes, I hoped there'd be a sequel.
Oh,
I didn't know.
Okay.
I mean, at that point, none of us knew.
Mm.
And we did kind of collectively lose our minds when the sequel was confirmed. Because we just wanted to see more of Neo.
That's what it is, isn't it? You want to see... I don't think it really mattered whether or not we saw more of... I don't know. Did I need to see the conclusions of the story? I don't know. I had my predictions of where the narrative was going to go in my teenage years.
I mean, the assumption was that he was going to become a messiah figure. Like based off
at the end. And die at the end. That was my assumption. I remember that. Yeah, I don't know. Let's not get too much into that, actually. Let's stick to this film for now, I think. I mean,
it's easy to sort of let opinions of later movies colour your opinion of the first
film. I really want to look at this film in a vacuum. That's what it is.
Because by itself, this movie, as you say, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Without any influence of any later opinions or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say? This is one of the greatest action movies of all time. It does. I mean, obviously, what we're watching here is supernatural martial arts. We're not watching like. You can go back and watch a Bruce Lee movie, and be like amazed by the realism and the choreography of the martial arts in those films for the time. But I mean, this is something else, And Jackie Chan made things cartoony and crazy in his films. And
he is more of a slapstick style, yeah.
Yeah, and like films after this sort of copied what this film did as well, But like, for capturing like a concept which was marrying, Asian martial arts anime with, and let's say Asian cyberpunk ideas with Western science fiction storytelling.
With the religious existential philosophies and...
Yeah, like it's a lot. It's a lot to unpack. It really is. But somehow this film does not drown under the weight of its own narrative. It is told and paced with confidence, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The characters. Obviously, they had years to write this movie because, if, like I said, there was like 3 movies that they shipped around, which was Assassins and Bound and this, and they used to write for comics. And I imagine they had a long, long time to work on this movie, which might be the reason why the other 2 films were not so good. Because, as you say, it's possible they weren't planning them. So it's always the same. You have years to write your first book, and then you have a month to write the second one.
Yeah.
It's always that classic adage, and maybe that's one of the reasons why, this film just works. Because, as I'm sure we will get into later on in later films, like when we get to them, those films get bogged down by way too much expositional dialogue.
Yeah,
whereas somehow
into a corner to a degree.
I think the problem is is that the expositional dialogue which overdoes the other films. In this film, it's hidden, isn't it?
It's
because
purely just a character going, "What the fuck is going on?" It's like, okay,
and someone
fine, we'll
explaining it
explain
to
it to
them,
you.
and it's
Yeah,
natural, isn't it? Because it's a character going from their world to another world, rather
and yeah,
than a group of characters going from set piece to set piece to set piece, like in the other films. A set piece, oh, there's a villain. They're going to tell us something. Blah 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 blah. So that narrative trope of the Alice in Wonderland, otherworld exploration mentor, it disguises the storytelling quirks that they're using. Maybe the Wachowskis watch too much anime because it is very common in anime and manga for characters to stand around spouting expositional dialogue about what they're doing. We've discussed
often
this in
because
the
the
pod
concepts
already.
are a bit more complicated than Commando. So
Uh, no, I find it because it's just I don't know. I think it's a cultural difference. I don't need I think you can watch. I don't know. It's just the way they do it. It's the shonen thing, isn't it?
mhm.
With with
And you
like
do get information dumps in between the action set pieces.
yeah, like a lot of shonens are, you know, hero has set powers, finds a villain, has to come up with new tricks to beat new powers, and there needs to be a discussion of what the powers are in the first place for the hero to overcome them. And it's normally the villain telling the hero what his powers are as he's doing them, and like I don't know, like you'll find that in a lot of like Japanese cinema that I have seen anyway, as well, anime specifically. Like characters just explaining what they think and what they're doing rather than showing you. It's one of the reasons why I've become somewhat fed up with anime, especially. And anyway, my point is that this film sort of dodges all that somehow by luck because they had the narrative drive to carry the movie in with Neo being being transported, being the Alice going into the Wonderland, so to speak. So it's interesting how later films they just like failed at this and had so much expositional dialogue. But did you know that all the actors in this film like had like required reading, so they understood the narrative themes and they had to be able to recite the story?
I can appreciate that. I mean, they wanted
Yeah,
them to. They wanted more than just sort of just basic reading script actors. They wanted people
yeah.
that could feel the material.
Like Nicolas Cage, Will Smith, Johnny Depp were all considered for the roles. A lot of them just read the script and went, "Nah, don't get it."
Hmm.
But Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, they're two of the ones that read it and went, "That's just great, love it." They obviously had. I think with Fishburne, stage actor, philosophy probably. Keanu Reeves, we know, is a geek, so had probably, you know,
They probably had the foundation there from his
yeah,
personal
already
passions.
probably seen Ghost in the Shell already, probably seen Akira already. Who knows, So was supportive enough, probably, and the right man for the job, in my opinion.
Yeah,
As I
absolutely
said,
perfect. I mean, at the time, you couldn't have said if someone had pitched this movie to you, you wouldn't have said Keanu Reeves would do well in that. But once you saw him in the role, you can't see anyone else there.
after a few of the other actors like turned it down, the studio wanted him apparently because of Speed, and I think this film suits him more than Speed anyway.
Yeah. Speed is still very much that kind of the old form of an action. Which not to knock it down, it's still a solid action movie. But
It's good. It's good.
yeah. But this is another level.
Oh, of course it is. I would say that this is like a formative movie of my youth and of my life, personally. Very important movie to me.
It became a yardstick by which you measure everything that came next.
Oh yeah, for years. It's definitely influenced me in my writing. It turns out, my dystopian series of novels was definitely influenced by this. Definitely, just can't help it.
One thing that may surprise you about this movie, for me,
Mhm.
is my wife, Rebecca.
Mhm.
She hates this movie.
Why?
Absolutely cannot stand it. She's not quite sure why. She just does not like this movie. I mean, despite the fact, I think because someone potentially may have like proposed it to her as a 90s cyberpunk movie. Which
that's got the thing is that's got connotations like
Well, bear in mind her favorite movie is Blade Runner.
yeah.
Which,
This it has cyberpunk.
by the way, I'm happy
elements.
to give her email if anyone wants to send any hate mail. But
It's complicated. It's complicated. Someone who said this is a cyberpunk movie doesn't know what cyberpunk is, unfortunately.
I mean, it's got tinges of it in there, but it's not. This isn't like William Gibson levels cyberpunk here.
The thing is that cyberpunk as a genre was born, aside from the concept of future 80s, is born from the internet. You know, born from information technology, born, the cyberpunk elements are in the real world with people plugging into machines, plugging into, virtual reality, let's say. That is at its core cyberpunk. One of the original cyberpunk novels, Neuromancer, is about people plugging themselves into what is called the Matrix, and which is a fucking virtual reality, internet. Whether the Wachowskis read Neuromancer, who knows? Who bloody knows? But the point is that the link is there. And this is what makes this film so smart and so clever, is that cyberpunk is a niche genre. Maybe not so much now, because it's sort of been blended with dystopian fiction, and it's sort of everywhere now. But what the Wachowskis did with this movie is they took elements from this, and they took elements from that, and they took elements from this, and they took elements from that, and they sort of put it all together and made The Matrix. Because The Matrix, for the most part, is filmed in a real-world setting, this makes this film more accessible to a mainstream audience. Disagree or agree?
Agree.
Yeah. If this film was 90% in the real world, with the giant farms and the battery humans and the monsters, this film would come across as a science fiction horror movie. Yes?
Yeah.
Not the techno thriller vibe it actually has, because most of it is in the Matrix, in the real world, the pretend real world.
That both worlds are real. By the end of it, I suppose, one argument could be made. I mean, that's what our Cypher is arguing.
But it's as real as you make it.
Exactly. That both of the worlds are important for different reasons.
It's the themes, the themes, aren't they? It's complex. I mean, not so complex now, because we've watched the film 1,000 times and talked about it and read about it, and other films have come out since then are probably more complicated, for good or for ill. But yeah, it does ask that question, doesn't it? Like I said, that's another way this film is written very, very smartly. Rather than a character turn around and say to you, "So this Matrix thing, what do you think? Do you think it's better to be in the Matrix, or do you think it's better to be out of it?" They have a fucking character tell you, "No, I want to be in the Matrix," and then they screw everyone over, and it becomes an important narrative plot point that creates conflict. I mean, Jesus Christ, dude, that's all we want, in novels, isn't it? And our stories, we want story to give us information, not characters standing around talking.
Yeah.
So smart, so bloody smart.
I was going to say that in my research of this, I actually came across a fanfic regarding Cypher, of all people. That an explanation for why he acts the way he does and why he eventually turns on the team. Which this is total headcanon, hasn't been confirmed by Wachowskis or anything like that. But when I kind of really liked it, and it's the fact that before they found Neo, they thought Cypher was the one.
Ha! Yeah, you told me this before, actually. Yeah, that's a cool idea. I like it. Yeah,
and that's the reason why he rebels so much, and why you can see almost a kind of resentment towards Neo when he first meets him, why he kind of treats him almost sarcastically.
I disagree with it personally, because for me, Neo represents the Cypher, the destruction of what Cypher wants, and that is to be in the Matrix. He doesn't want to be in the real world because the real world is shit. If they destroy the robots, right?
Cypher's got nothing to return to.
Exactly, and in his lifetime, he will not go back to that world. So that's what Neo represents. Neo represents the undoing of what he prefers. But I do like that headcanon idea as well.
And it was like things like when he's talking to Trinity and he makes reference to the fact of for a long time I thought I was in love with you.
Yeah.
And because being rejected by her means that he isn't the chosen one.
Yeah, that's right.
Because
that's
her
cool.
love is and the fact that she wouldn't love him meant that he wasn't the one, and that was what bred his resentment from within him.
That's cool. I like it. That goes with the mysticism at the heart of the story as well.
Yeah.
Which, when they weren't going to try to explain everything.
Yeah. But it also shows the difference between him and Neo is when they're both told they're not the one, how they responded to that news. And how they both went in polar opposite directions, where he chose then that he was just going to reject everything and return back to his old life, whilst Neo, despite knowing he's not the one or believing he's not the one, still endeavours to do the right thing.
That's right, and rescue Morpheus, which is character building, isn't it? So
yeah,
it's cool. It's cool. So Out of interest, Mark, as I say, as we have mentioned regarding the mysticism and that there are elements of this story that are unexplained, so to speak. How do you feel about that in this movie? Do you think they need to be explained, or do you feel like the film suffers because they're not explained?
Well, 17-year-old me or 16-year-old me wanted everything explained.
Mm.
I wanted so much to have more. I wanted all of this explained. I wanted to know this world, and I wanted to know about the War of the Robots and everything. But 41-year-old me appreciates now that maybe some things are best left untold. That sometimes you don't need to have everything. Sometimes it's enough just to allude to it and that be enough. Because sometimes the explanation don't match.
Yes, I was about to say, it's because what this film does is it stimulates your imagination by referring to sequences that have happened already, because it's in media res, and it stimulates your imagination, and therefore it makes you, more invested in the current story. But I was the same as well as you. You want to know more. You want those imagination gaps filled in by film.
Fresh and so new, and it was
so exciting.
I devoured everything that came after this, except
did you do all the games as well.
I didn't do the games. That's the one thing I didn't. I mean, I knew of them. I knew like Enter the Matrix and the Path of Neo and all that. I knew of them, saw a bit of them. But for me, it was the movies and the Animatrix, which did a good job of fleshing out a whole bunch of stuff around this movie. But yeah, I say it's. Whilst they were interesting at times, nothing ever hit as hard as this first movie. I mean, this got you on a level because you had nothing but which to compare it to before, whilst all the sequels had the first movie to compare it to. Which is the unfortunate truth. Yeah, I mean, this movie, its influence is still felt today. Hell, they released Resurrections a year or two ago. I mean, there is still.
I've still not seen it.
Don't bother, man.
Yeah, I'm not going to.
But I mean, this movie has been, as I say, it's been paid homage in numerous movies since, and it's also been satirized out the arse in terms of the sheer amount of jokes that have been referred to, from There Is No Spoon to the martial arts style fight sequences to the bullet time. It's just, I mean, it's been ripped off from everything from Scary Movie to Shrek in terms of making comical aspects out of it. This was a titan for a while in our culture, and it's still there. I mean, it's not as present as it was back when it first came out, but people still acknowledge this movie quite strongly.
It's 25 years old as of this year, dude. 25 years old.
That's fucking
quarter of a
insane.
century old.
Yeah. This movie will always be a classic in cinema because it pushed boundaries. It did something new at the time that hadn't been done in the mainstream anyway. It married as you say, a number of concepts that we hadn't seen put together in quite this fashion before.
Yeah, that's what I think is his greatest achievement, is that it put all these ideas together and it told it in a succinct, well thought out, well constructed, well paced narrative that's understandable, although at the time it blew our minds. That's very understandable, and that doesn't overstay its welcome. And once you, as you say, you desired more, you wanted more. It left you wanting more. What greater compliment can you pay a single movie, a single book? It left you wanting more. That's what you want, isn't it?
Yeah. Because all you got was a couple of parries and a boot down a corridor, and you wanted to see more of that shit.
Yeah.
But the problem is that they went a bit too far. But nonetheless, brilliant movie.
For another episode, I think. That's for another episode.
I mean, what else can be said, man? I think you've kind of summed it up perfectly there. This is just a fucking exceptional movie.
Yeah. Definitely one of the best movies of the 90s.
Yes.
Definitely. All right. So, I think that's probably a good opportunity to jump into a break, Mark. What do you think?
Okay, well, at this point then, I shall begrudgingly relinquish control of the pod back to you.
Welcome back to the podcast. So, Mark, we're going to go on with our 90s classics episode. kind of hard to call this movie a classic, I suppose, because it's more of a cult classic. It's not a classic in the canon, is it? In the lexicon of 90s classic movies, I suppose.
No, this movie passed me by when it first came out. I wasn't even aware of it till years later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that is, of course, Dark City, the neo-noir science fiction film released in 1998, directed by Alex Proyas, whose previous film was, of course, The Crow. It was written by Proyas himself, with credits also to Lem Dobbs and David S. Goyer. David S. Goyer, of course, a writer on many well-known films, including the Christopher Nolan-helmed Dark Knight trilogy. So, Dark City had a budget of 27 million, and it made at the box office 27.2 million, making it a box office bomb.
Yeah.
It did have its fans, though. It wouldn't be the first time I've mentioned Roger Ebert on this podcast. He championed this movie a lot. Even went as far as to be on the commentary for the late 2000s, maybe the tweens Blu-ray release. But yes, over time, through rentals and word of mouth, this film has become known as a cult classic. Ironically, Mark, over the years, I've actually met a lot of people who love this film. A lot of people who have seen it. It's just not well known in the mainstream.
No, it kind of it got lost in the shadow of other movies, didn't it?
So, because this is a cult movie, and because it is possible that listeners may not have seen it, I'm going to sort of discuss a certain amount of the plot and then add a spoiler tag warning. And then in the chapter list on the episode, you'll see like spoiler-free chat and then spoiler chat about the actual synopsis of the film. And then obviously, pretty much when we talk about our opinions, the themes, and also the comparison to The Matrix, there will be lots of spoilers. So I suppose, if you haven't seen this film and you're just listening, listen to me give you the beginning of the synopsis, and if it does sort of pique your interest, definitely give this film a watch. It is, and also watch the director's cut. It is a film that you need to go in cold. You really do.
Yeah.
Don't get caught up in recap culture like everyone else and listen to someone spoil the whole film and then go and watch it. Really go and watch it like people did in the 90s, because that's the best way to appreciate this movie. So
Yeah, go in like the protagonist.
yeah, literally. So anyway, as I said, this next section will be relatively spoiler free. So the synopsis. The protagonist, played by Rufus Sewell, awakens in a hot tub with amnesia. He discovers a dead woman and a bloody knife. He receives a phone call from Dr. Daniel Schreiber, played by Kiefer Sutherland, who warns him to leave the scene as a group known as the Strangers will chase him. Police Inspector Frank Bumstead, always loved that name, played by William Hurt, is looking for Murdoch as he suspects Murdoch is actually in I've just kind of fucked this up. He's looking for the protagonist, because he doesn't know his name yet, as he suspects the protagonist in a series of prostitute murders. The problem is that the protagonist can't remember anything. The protagonist eventually learns that his name is John Murdoch and had a wife named Emma. Emma, of course, is played by Jennifer Connelly. In an altercation with the Strangers, and the Strangers are like suited, pale, bald men who float, let's say, and often wear top hats. It's an image, that's for sure.
It's certainly a look. So
Yeah. The Strangers sort of find Murdoch and pursue him, and it's during this altercation that Murdoch unlocks the use of strange powers that enable him to alter reality. These powers, the Strangers refer to as tuning. So, over the next period of the narrative, Murdoch wanders the Dark City, because that's what we're going to call it, because it doesn't really have a name, does it?
nah.
It's a mishmash of structural design and architecture, ranging from film noir to 20s Art Deco and dystopian nightmarish imagery like Fritz Lang's masterpiece, Metropolis. At midnight, suddenly, every single citizen in the Dark City falls asleep, except for Murdoch, and the strangers can be seen sort of rearranging the citizens of this city, moving them, changing them. In actual fact, of course, Dr. Schreiber is involved in this as well. In actual fact, they are essentially removing and reapplying identities between these human beings, changing their memories, changing their upbringing, changing their their memories. It's during this period, after this mystery, that Murdoch learns of a place known as Shell Beach, which is advertised on billboards. Shell Beach is Murdoch would have known about Shell Beach before his amnesia turn in the tub. It's kind of like a magical place that is advertised throughout the city. Everyone knows where it is, and
Well, he
yet,
himself has broken memories of it, doesn't he?
yeah, it's because like remnants of his implanted memories are still there.
Mm-hmm.
And this place Shell Beach is advertised on billboards, and it's a magical destination where everyone has been, and yet no one can remember how to get there. So I'm gonna say this is like the setup of the movie, and pretty much anything I say after this is like a massive spoiler now, because this is like,
you've gone relatively deep into it, but you haven't really sort of revealed anything yet.
It's all set up, isn't it? So at this point, so yeah, absolutely. So if you haven't seen this film and you kind of like the setup I've described, go and watch it now, please, and then come back. I'm going to do like a 5-second countdown, and then I'm going to start the spoiler section. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So Murdoch continues to escape the strangers, and in order to find Murdoch as quickly as they can, because Murdoch can tune, and therefore that makes him a threat, the strangers inject one of their own, Mr. Hand, played most eloquently by Richard O'Brien.
God damn, man, he is brilliant in this, isn't he?
We'll get to the cast. They actually implant Mr. Hand with Murdoch's own memories, and this is where you see his like experienced Shell Beach growing up there, and obviously Jennifer Connelly's as his wife. Bumstead, the police officer, catches up with Murdoch, and through discussion, Bumstead actually reveals that he has misgivings about the city. They eventually, after teaming up, find Schreiber and confront him. And Schreiber reveals that the strangers who pursue Murdoch are actually aliens who use human corpses as their hosts, and they are actually like a hive mind species. They are actually like an energy parasite, effectively. And they are experimenting on humanity, trying to discover what it is that makes them individual, what is that makes humans human. They are doing this because they are an endangered species. He also reveals that Murdoch is something of an anomaly within the system, let's say, that they have created, and has the ability of the strangers, of course, which is tuning. Over the course of the movie, it is revealed that Shell Beach actually doesn't exist. There's this really great scene where Bumstead and Murdoch go to where Shell Beach is supposed to be. There's like a giant sign, isn't there, for Shell Beach, but it's just a painted sign, and that's it.
Yeah, it's a billboard, yeah.
It's a billboard. And so they break down and they start attacking the wall behind it, break through it, and what is behind the wall, Mark?
Just the empty vacuum of space, if I'm
It's
correctly.
space, exactly. At this point, the strangers manage to come up with the trio, and Bumstead is killed, and Murdoch kidnapped.
And Bumstead gets a momentary view of what the city truly is, doesn't he?
Yes, that's right. Effectively, it sort of exists on a construct in space, doesn't it?
Almost like a Discworld, if you will.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it. That's probably a very good way to put it. So, the strangers believe that Murdoch is the final answer in their experiments, as he is effectively an evolved human, isn't he? he is a human with the Stranger's powers. And so the Strangers then seek to inject Murdoch with their own collective memory to sort of create this ultimate being and try and find the answer to save the species. However, Schreiber, as it is revealed, was a human being who basically turned his back on humanity to work with the Strangers, betrays them, and he injects artificial memories within Murdoch that basically give him years and years and years and years of training in the art of tuning, effectively making him a master. He basically learns everything there is to learn about the Dark City and how it works. Something I forgot to mention earlier on is that one of the things that the Strangers do to like change the humans within the Dark City is they change the environment, don't they? There's this really, really
Yeah,
great.
it's like a clockwork warping city, isn't it? It's just
That's
strange.
right. That's pretty much the way I would describe it. They've all got like psychokinetic powers, and they use their psychokinetic powers to tune to change reality. And this reality being the Dark City, which itself is, well, a physical thing, is sort of part of this giant machine that can be manipulated and changed at will. That's kind of like the idea of like why it sort of represents multiple eras of culture, isn't it? It's almost like the Strangers have sort of
they've smashed together multiple cultures and eras to get a sort of gestalt pot of different types of humanity.
That's
and
right.
You can see where they pulled in and pushed in and taken out and overlaid over and over again.
That's just great world building, isn't it? Because the film doesn't explicitly tell you this, really.
No, you just pick up on the fact that this world feels a bit wrong, but you can't put your finger on why. It takes a while before you realise that the world lives in perpetual night.
Absolutely. He mentioned it, doesn't he? He says, haven't you ever seen the sun? Even though we all remember the sun in Shell Beach. It's something he says to Bumstead when they're discussing when he first starts, when Bumstead's explaining his reservations. Anyway, so basically, at this moment, thanks to Schreiber, Murdoch is now a god. He has more power than the entirety of the Strangers put together. He has complete control over his tuning psychokinetic abilities. Now, to sort of describe how these psychokinetic abilities work, I guess a great reference point would be like Akira, the classic Kishimoto manga and anime. They're like psychic powers gone crazy.
Yeah, unbridled psychokinetic energy.
Yeah. And as mentioned, so the Strangers use this power to manipulate and change the city. We're just mentioning how there's so much to talk about in this film. It's hard to get lost, really, isn't it? It's just it is a well of like just everything. Farty farts, really. But there's when they rearrange the city, you see like the skyscrapers and the buildings move, don't you? They actually move the city around and reconfigure it like a puzzle. So Murdoch has access to this as well. So the climax of the movie is Murdoch engages in a battle of wills via tuning with the leader of the Strangers, Mr. Book. It goes on. Obviously, Murdoch wins. However, Murdoch learns that Emma, his wife, has had her memory reconfigured and is lost. This is where, like, the climax of the film, I think, really hits hard, isn't it? Murdoch uses his powers at this point to actually create the Shell Beach that never existed, that only existed in his memory, and reunites with Emma, who is now, once again, his previous wife. He literally just creates his own reality. Importantly, Murdoch notes that the Strangers, when looking for humanity, looked in the wrong place. He points to his head, doesn't he?
It's...
To understand humanity, you shouldn't have been looking in here. You should have been looking somewhere else. And there's that great scene, isn't there, when he rotates the entire construct on which the Dark City resides, so it faces the sunlight and receives the sun for the first time. And that's the end of the movie. It's certainly it's a pocket universe, that's for sure. It's a story that definitely exists only within its story. But I'm wondering, when you think about this brief synopsis, that there has got a lot of similarities with The Matrix. A lot.
Yeah, there
So
are some like down to sort of key notes, even sort of like minor throwaway things that cross over in similar fashion. Down to like the fact that the shadowy figure played by Richard O'Brien refers to the main character as Mr. Murdoch.
yeah, yeah.
Which I mean, I get with this movie, I get the vibe that it feels like when I first watched this, I was like, "Oh my fucking god!" Like but then I realized this movie came out a year beforehand.
So let me just talk you through the my notes about how the comparisons. Okay, so before you, so let's get to the nitty gritty first of all. This film is about a species that overthrows man and keeps it captive in an experimental false reality for its own sustenance.
Yeah.
I mean, when you put it like that, it's exactly the same. Now, there are books that have supposedly done this before, which I've not read. But
It's a little bit more of a niche specific trope, isn't it? Like it's not one that gets done very often.
Well, the false reality aspect is common. That's the thing. But like the overpowered species that overpowers man, personally, I've not come across it myself. But anyway, so here's a bit of information for you, Mark, that might elicit a reaction from you. Did you know that Dark City was actually filmed in 1996?
Really?
And was delayed throughout almost all of 1997 and then released in early 1998, a year before The Matrix.
What happened? Was it just development hell or?
So, first of all, they ran out of money.
Ah.
And Proyas wanted more money to finish the film. The studio looked at the cut and they went, "This makes no sense." And he went, "Exactly." So they got a bit more money to finish it off. The studio still weren't happy, which is the reason why in the theatrical version of the film, the entire plot is explained in the opening narration. Very bad. And also, it was delayed because of Titanic, supposedly. Says Alex Proyas himself in interviews.
Well, they were afraid that
the original set release date was about the same time as Titanic, and this
Titanic
is
did crush just about everything else.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was a fucking event.
Even I saw that fucking film at the cinema, dude.
Me too. Yeah.
Oh, dear, oh dear. Did I see it with you? I can't remember.
No, I think I went with my girlfriend at the time. And
I think I went with my girlfriend as well. I seem to remember like someone actually bursting into tears in the cinema, like actually grizzling.
Yeah.
Like a air raid siren, and I was like, oh. Anyway. So those dates are interesting. Some of Dark City's sets were also used in The Matrix. Did you know that?
Didn't know that.
Yes. So the sequences where Murdoch is running away from the strangers at the beginning of the film.
Oh, you mean like the rooftops?
The rooftops. Yep. Same set as when Trinity's running away from the agents.
I can see that now that you say it like that. Yeah.
Yep.
I will say that some of these sets look like they're rejected Games Master sets. When he goes to where the strangers dwell.
Yeah, the giant face.
Yeah, all of that. It just gives the vibe of kind of like I'm just expecting Patrick Moore to suddenly manifest on the screen or something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, but still very visually interesting. This movie. It's one of those ones that makes you want to look at it, and like when it starts twisting and the buildings start creeping out of that weird like gear-esque structure, it's a weirdly designed movie, man.
Interestingly enough, the special effects that fueled those like the skyscraper morphing, the puzzle box city configuration sequences actually came from The Crow. It was because a lot of the sequences of The Crow, the long shots of the city were like miniatures, and these were miniatures being like shifted around. Anyway, another bit of information for you, Mark, that's really fucked up. Because I watched a few interviews with Alex Proyas just recently, stated that this film, and you can, if you look, you can find it out. At the same one of the four producers of this film also produced The Matrix, and against the wishes of the makers of Dark City, without permission, showed Dark City to the makers of The Matrix.
Well, the Wachowskis.
While no names have been mentioned. Just that Proyas is saying that this film, when it was completed, or one of the early cuts was shown to people involved in The Matrix.
Well, that's not really a surprise because the fact that they would come across so many specific plot points in
What
one
about the
movie to
green?
another.
What about the green hue that this film has? That
Yeah,
is
they
also in
both
the
have a
Matrix.
similar palette.
Yeah.
You've got the shadowy sort of like government-esque characters. You've got the one who can warp reality and is trying to understand what is the Dark City, what is the Matrix, and all of that. It to claim otherwise would be just invite for like suspicion. It's just. I mean, I said it myself when I first watched this movie. I mean, I think one of the first things I said to you was, "No fucking way!" Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
And because
Yeah.
I came across Dark City second, as I imagine most people did,
Yes.
the inclination is to think they ripped off the Matrix until you actually
Yeah.
look back and actually check the receipts, check the notes, and go,
Mhm.
hold up. These are two very similar stories in some regards, although the core is different in terms of the motivations of the oppressing race, species, whatever. There is still a lot of parallels.
Mechanically, isn't it? It's not getting to the nitty-gritty. Sorry, let's get into the nitty-gritty. I will call it objective storyline beats are different. Sorry, the subjective storyline beats are different, but the objective pillars that hold up those storyline beats are the same.
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. There are too many elements that kind of are front and center that you can see. You can see it's just got a different coat of paint slapped on it.
It's weird, isn't it? One is The Matrix is a cyberpunk influenced kung fu action movie in the grand scheme of things, whereas this is a dystopian neo noir at its heart.
Yeah.
They both, interestingly enough, have anime influences. As I said, the aforementioned Akira and the aforementioned Ghost in the Shell with The Matrix. However, if you ask me, the biggest difference between the two, and I think may well have been one of the main factors to the, say, failure of Dark City and the success of The Matrix, is that this film is fucking weird. It's very strange. Whereas The Matrix has got that cool factor. Everything is just that much more awesome. Obviously,
the Matrix is a lot more slick, but the acting in Dark City is better.
Oh, for sure. The cast is absolutely superb in Dark City. I mean, I was going to mention, I didn't really want to do it as I was talking about doing the synopsis, but like Rufus Sewell, at the beginning of the film, there is like this narrative about him being a serial killer, isn't it? Him killing prostitutes.
And he's not sure.
And he doesn't remember any of it. And that's where like the mystery starts, isn't it? Interestingly enough, I think that the strangers looking a bit like Count Orlok from Nosferatu and this like horror movie motif, serial killer motif, sort of lend horror undertones to the narrative, which I really like. But Rufus Sewell's ability to act with humanity, fragility, and intensity sort of cloud your perception of him.
Oh, he's got very vulnerable eyes, hasn't he? Is this the way in which he emotes?
Absolutely. But he's also intense as well. And I think if you were told that he was a serial killer, like for example, in those like shots of his memories, that you sort of get very shown very quickly, the memories that were supposed to go into him that never did, with him being the serial killer, killing the prostitutes, like you can believe it's him. Stage actor, great actor, obviously.
The thing is, I didn't know this guy much prior to Dark City. I mean,
it's theatre actor, that's why.
I only ever knew him from Knight's Tale.
Yeah.
With Heath Ledger.
Yes, isn't that after this?
I believe so, yeah. And he played the villain in that, and he plays a bastard well in that. The whole kind of arrogant, condescending.
British theatre actor plays villain in American movie. Big surprise.
My God. Quelle surprise.
What can you say? But yeah, he's fantastic in this. He's absolutely fantastic. And obviously, Jennifer Connelly, while her part is small, in terms of action, but I think actually she represents something quite large thematically. She's good in everything she's in, so you can't really, the introduction of her as like the femme fatale like singer in the jazz bar is like fantastic and really indicative of like the noir influences. You know, I think William Hurt is actually very good in this. This, incidentally, the same year that was his Lost in Space outing was released, which he is notoriously bad in. You know, but yeah, he's very good in this. He's very, very good. And obviously, Richard O'Brien is like, yeah, he's brilliant. Sleep now, and
Yeah,
all the great
he's
lines.
got just a fantastic. I mean, I remember him back in the days of Crystal Maze.
Crystal Maze, of course,
And he was
Rocky
chewing the
Horror.
scenery back in those days as well. But he's got a way of doing it without making it look like he's putting effort into it.
Yeah,
He's got a very laid back, but he still commands the scene at the same time. Yeah, love seeing him show up because I do feel he never made it on some levels, but what you do.
Oh man, come on! Everyone loves him though. Like I said,
Rocky Horror. Yeah.
Rocky Horror, man. So famous because of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of like genres, I do love how this film is like an amalgam of horror, of classic noir and dystopian cinema. It sort of mixes Maltese Falcon with Terry Gilliam's Brazil, Fritz Lang's Metropolis, and novels such as 1984 and whatever.
Yeah, it's got that. Yeah, the dystopian, but the urban dystopian.
Yes, but another thing as well, I always felt like it has been labelled as being Kafkaesque. There is definitely a Franz Kafka undertone to the proceeding.
Of like dreamlike transformation.
Not just dreamlike transformation, but like it's the trial. So you've never read the book The Trial, have you? Or seen? You've read his story Metamorphosis, haven't you?
Yeah.
I remember you telling me. So The Trial is like a dystopian novel. It's the only novel that Franz Kafka ever completed. And basically, the long short story is that the main character is basically persecuted by an unknown force throughout the movie, and the story is about him finding out like who is basically persecuting him, and it's always an unseen enemy, and like the book does this wonderful job of creating this sense of paranoia and blame, and it has like this dreamlike awe to it, this dreamlike feel to it, kind of like David Lynch as well. David Lynch is definitely a successor of Kafka's style, and I always felt like this film sort of had a similar sort of tone, in that regard, where there's this paranoia when, like, Rufus Sewell's Murdoch is going through the streets, and people are falling asleep, and he's like, what the hell's going on? The mystery is deep and set, and, the strangers are watching, the strangers are waiting, and obviously the what would you call it? The dystopian nightmare of the cityscape really reminds me of George Orwell's The Trial adaptation as well. It took a lot from German Expressionism, the harsh architecture of the German Expressionist movement in that film sort of appears in this film. Obviously, Metropolis obviously did like the German Expressionist dystopian city first, so, but all of it is sort of like related as far as I'm concerned in this movie. But there's also another like really important literary influence on this film, Mark. Do you know what it is?
What was that?
It's Plato's The Allegory of the Cave. Have you heard of this?
Ah, that's about the gentleman who lives his entire life in a cave, but only sees a crack which the sun shines through.
That's
projecting
correct.
An image onto a surface of the cave.
A shadow.
Yeah, and so he's only got a shadow of the outside world of which to build an understanding of what the world is.
That's correct. And the story, let's say, many of his stories are about him talking to other people. I believe it's Plato talking to Socrates.
Socrates.
We're Socrates!
All just dust in the wind, dude.
about these people that are trapped in this cave, and saying, and like the idea of the message behind the story is that what Plato is saying is that if someone was removed from these chains in this cave and brought outside the cave, they would be beyond reality. They would have a greater understanding of reality. They would ascend reality. And that is effectively what Dark City and The Matrix are about. It's about people being in a reality that isn't real, controlled by someone else, and then leaving it and ascending and becoming perceptually ascended, let's say. So yeah.
Oh, we forgot one other actor, man.
Oh, did I? My apologies. Who else?
Kiefer Sutherland.
Of course, Kiefer Sutherland. My God. I mean, this is Kiefer Sutherland is the first actor you see in the film, and the first actor you hear if you see the director's cut version. Yeah, what a casting this was! What a casting this was! As
Would
Dr.
not have
Schraber.
called it. Like if you before I'd seen it, if you told me like he plays like an old kind of grouchy kind of doctor with pocket watch and sort of like, so a droopy eye and
yeah,
it's just. But yeah, he embraces the role. He fucking goes for it. So
it's interesting, isn't it? The character itself is a tragic character, isn't it?
He's one who's lost his hope.
Yeah, but with because he is literally the one you see. I will discuss this in detail when we talk about the themes, but the way that memories are implanted into the humans is through an injection into the forehead, isn't it? And he's the one seen doing this to Murdoch when the experiment fails and he wakes up and he has amnesia because he has no memories, they've just been wiped.
Yeah.
And later on, you see him doing it to people that are asleep in Dark City, working with the strangers. So he is effectively like, part of their scheme, their plan. But the futility of it, I think, sort of it entraps him, within that world.
Yeah.
So, did you have anything else to say about comparisons to The Matrix, Mark? Because
I mean, I could sort of espouse about all the different key details and stuff like that kind of line up down to the fact that it essentially has the one in both of them. The idea of memories or simulations being injected directly into the head through use of needles or whether it be cables plugged into the back of the head. There's so much you could give out about in terms of the fact that clearly someone was copying somebody's notes here. But at the same time, the core of each story is inherently different. They do steer away from each other at that point, and they both do have two different concepts. It's just, that window dressing is very disorientating.
Well, in the end, they're both about breaking free of control. So
in some fashion, it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, the core. If you break it down, they are films that are both about breaking out of control.
Yeah, despite the fact that control is for different reasons. In both cases.
Forget the reasons. It's about control in the grand scheme of things. Forget about motives. Forget about that. That's the objective stuff here. Subjective elements of the plot. That stuff that writers can fill in. We're gonna breaking down this story.
Well, to a key phrase.
So its key thing is the hero's journey, breaking out of his world.
Yeah.
And reaching
overthrowing and
Yeah, exactly. So therefore it's the same. As far as I'm concerned, but the key difference between these two films for me personally is that The Matrix, because of the stunning action sequences, and it is the case when I saw it at the cinema, you can sort of get away with not getting the plot and just be amazed at how amazing it looks.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Dark City, you have to pay attention to fully appreciate the movie because its story and its themes are the most important aspects of it.
Yeah. There's no sort of flashy wire food to distract you in here. You've got pure dialogue and narrative.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a lot of dialogue as well. There's a lot of dialogue. You've got to pay attention. Dark City, even though there are themes in The Matrix that are to do with reality, allegory of the cave, whatever, Dark City goes much, much, much deeper with them and has a lot more to say about the human condition as far as I'm concerned. It's a much more meditative experience overall and a much more serious narrative. But, as far as I'm concerned, both films can exist. I love The Matrix and I love Dark City. So, as far as I'm concerned, Alex Proyas himself has said that he kept mum for years for fear of people thinking he was bitter, which is probably an easy interpretation to have, considering the fact that The Matrix was a massive success and Dark City wasn't. But at the same time, The Matrix was, even though, I suppose, on paper, a risk, when the Wachowskis showed it to Warner Brothers, they went, this is going to be massive. They knew that film was going to be massive. Summer blockbusters were a thing. Martial arts movies were a thing. And science fiction was a thing. And The Matrix did everything that was popular at the time, but just took it to the next level. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And whereas Dark City
also the marketing was next level.
Of course.
I mean, Dark City got nothing.
There was a trailer for it, and it's a good trailer. But yeah, exactly.
I mean, you didn't see any Dark City posters on the sides of buses or anything like that.
No.
It probably got sort of like some screen time and like late in the evenings on Channel 4 or something. It wasn't the same level. It didn't get the public talking and hyped up about it before the movie came out.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I'll tell you what, I'm going to say, let's take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll talk about our initial experiences and how we discovered this movie. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's crack. Okay then, let's be right back. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. So, Mark, can you remember your first experience of this movie? Can you remember how you discovered it?
I can't remember exactly when I watched it, but I watched it at a young age, of early 20s, late teens sort of thing. Must have been 19 or 20 maybe. And it was actually off your suggestion.
I was thinking, was it my own suggestion? I think it might have been, yeah.
And this did come out of the era of those dark movies of the late 90s. Those movies that probably wouldn't have been made in any other time. Those, as you say, with Illusions the Lights of the Crow and things like that. Movies that they were always destined to be niche hits. They were never going to be.
The Crow was not a niche hit. It wasn't like the Matrix level successful, but it did well.
Everyone had a copy of The Crow in their video collection back when we were kids. That was just the done thing, really. Everyone had a copy of The Crow.
Yeah.
And this is one that, whilst it didn't hit the same levels as that, it's one that would probably turn up in a lot of people's video collections, not because they bought it with the intention, or more probably bought it out of curiosity. And yeah, I watched this movie. I think you might lend me the video. I don't know. I can't remember. All I know is I watched it at a young age, and this was before the likes of the internet, so I probably didn't pirate it. And I do remember coming back to you because this was a couple of years clear of the Matrix by this point. And being, as I say, what the actual fuck? There was a lot of conversation following that viewing. And that was when I had the revelation not long after that, where I believe you were the one who told me that it came out first.
Yeah.
And I spent a while, a good solid time after that, kind of wrestling with my feelings about that. The kind of possibility that the Matrix might be, what's the word I'm looking for here? Plagiarized in some fashion from another movie. And this is the thing. If you find out a story that you truly appreciated and enjoyed, then you realise that the story has been plagiarized from another earlier source. Does it take anything away from that initial enjoyment? I'd like to be able to say no, but there is a certain fraction, there's a certain sliver inside of me that still goes, I don't know.
It bothers me a lot. I'll give you an example, right? So, in terms of, not narrative-based, but, I'll give you an example when it happened recently to me. So, music. I'm quite into, alternative rock, shoegaze, grunge, and quite a popular, modern-day, female-fronted grunge band called Soft Cult. I saw live, actually, last year. And just on this, there's been a resurgence in the last couple of years of nu metal influenced bands who are making music inspired by Deftones, by System of a Down, by Slipknot, Korn, whatnot.
Yeah.
And a few really good bands as well. And I discovered this band called Loathe, and they are basically Slipknot and Deftones had a baby, literally. They're very good. And then I heard one of their songs, and I realised it sounded exactly the same as my favourite song by Soft Cult. Soft Cult are a band that I'm out now, and I went back and looked at it and listened to it, compared it, and it actually broke my heart, And online people were like, yeah, the Loathe thing. Apparently it was dealt with away from the media, let's say, although there were reports about it in internet journos, let's say. I've never been able to look at Soft Cult the same. It's too similar. I
mean, clearly it must have been some form of, at the very least, heard the song first and then wrote.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's too much. It's just too much. This is not like someone using a motif from from an old Russian like classical ditty.
Well, to make Metal Gear Solid.
Although that was a problem because
that was problematic. The thing is, I love that theme.
I know,
fucking love that theme, man. And then you find out that's
no. Yeah, I know. You took it away.
Hurts.
They took it away. But yeah, in terms of like music, is another example. Say with Metal Gear Solid, it has actually really affected me, and for a long time, I felt the same about the Matrix. Maybe it's because I'm getting old, and I'm a lot more relaxed in my old age. But like, I hadn't really thought about it for a while until we discussed doing this episode, and it was you that suggested doing the Matrix because you loved the movie. And I thought, oh, that would be good to do the Matrix and Dark City. That would be a good. Through line.
Let's put these two together and like really grind it down. So.
Yeah, and it made me realise that I'm not angry at all about it actually. And I'm after like rewatching The Matrix and talking about it with you, and like reading about it and thinking about when I watched it as a kid and stuff. I'm thinking, do you know what? Right. While as I just mentioned earlier on, while the core plot thread is the same as Dark City, The Matrix does so much with its own
there is
identity.
So much more than that. That story. You're right.
Yeah. Like the story was like when you saw The Matrix and you came out of it, you were blown away by the fucking special effects and the fighting, and then you went, well, what the fuck was that about? As we said outside the cinema, and now. And then after a while, you discover that as you think about the story, you see it again. You think, "Wow, this was a really good story," And then you see Dark City, and then Dark City takes that story away from you, and what you're left with is the cool stuff. You're still left with the cool stuff, So, like the cool fight scenes, the hero's journey that is very well done in The Matrix. It is probably done with more aplomb than it is in Dark City. I'm at this point where I'm fine. I'm fine with both films, I think that the two Matrix sequels do go out of their way to differentiate themselves from Dark City. Maybe that's the reason why they added all that extra philosophical bullshit into the Matrix sequels, to add more context for the narrative, to differentiate it more. The idea of the multiple ones. We will get into this when we talk about these films again. Let's not get into that now. Let's stick with the films we're talking about. But anyway, this long-winded fable about me and my feelings is this. Both films can exist, and I'm totally fine with it. I love both films. So. How do you feel about that, Mark?
I can appreciate that point of view, but it doesn't stop me from having something in the back of my mind.
Really?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I fucking love The Matrix, and it's the reason why I suggested it in the first place, even knowing everything with Dark City and all that. And when you said Dark City as a counterpoint to my offer of The Matrix, there was a part of me went, oh, we're going to have to go there, aren't we?
Yeah. So let me just ask you. So you rewatched Dark City, how long before we were recording this episode?
Yesterday.
Okay. So do you think your feelings have changed in any way towards The Matrix or Dark City after watching Dark City again for this episode?
As you say, I feel there is enough separation. This isn't just a band copying another band's song. I mean, true. It's kind of like someone in the next room over overhearing the pitch meeting for the movie, but only catching every other sentence.
Yes.
So that's how it felt to me in that regard. It's like it's not a full-on carbon copy reproduction of another film. It's just that's a good idea, and that's a good idea as well.
Story beats.
Our movie isn't going to be all about that. However, that would be a nice little bit to put in there, and. It's but
I mean, it was noted that the Wachowskis pitched multiple movies to Warner Brothers, wasn't it? And as we mentioned earlier on, Assassins, Bound, and The Matrix were the three films they pitched, and they made Assassins, but they lost creative control. They made Bound with creative control, and they made The Matrix. And how long was The Matrix on the back burner? How long was it in the back of their minds?
I know that the pre-production was long on it. They had them training in martial arts a while before the actual movie went in.
They storyboarded the fuck out of that film. They basically made their own personal manga for The Matrix. The storyboard it.
So yeah, this makes you wonder how early did they see that copy of Dark City? If it was the Wachowskis themselves, or if it was someone who was advising them or consulting.
I think that somehow, because there was another movie that came out about the same era as well, 13th Floor, which I've not seen, which has been referenced multiple times.
Oh yeah, I've seen the video cover, but I've never seen that movie.
Never seen it.
It's the one you always saw when you were down the video rental shop, and you looked at it because it had the green wire frame, and it was like,
yes,
ooh, what's that? And
I found the book that inspired it as well, so I'm actually going to read that. And obviously Chris Nolan's Memento as well, which has got a lot about memory and well, it's about time displacement, isn't it? Really, but weird mindfuck movies were sort of in the consciousness of filmmakers at the time.
They were coming in strong, yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if that the basic motifs behind The Matrix were there, and maybe Dark City maybe clarified things a little bit or set certain story elements in stone. I don't think that The Matrix is a rip-off of it. I just think there's just some weird weird relationship between the two. Yeah. And maybe this story that Alex Proyas told about how a producer showed Dark City to the makers of The Matrix just maybe made them either think they're on the right track or made them go with certain elements that they weren't 100% sure about, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, because it's just too unlikely that so many points would bounce.
So strange.
In the same rhythm. It'd be down to the main character, down to the main antagonists. Well, not main antagonists, actually, I suppose.
Same. The agents and the fucking strangers are the same.
Even referring to the main character by his surname like that. And little touches like that. It was
crazy, isn't it? Yeah, it's
crazy. I do feel that's stuff that you can't turn around and go, well, that's just a coincidence.
Having the powers to manipulate the fake world as well.
Yeah, you can twist reality. He is essentially the one.
It's weird, isn't it? It's weird. It's so hard to really, really, really just make a decision. Like I said, that's why I just think, do you know what? I'm glad I got both movies now.
Yeah.
So, but how I first saw Dark City, Mark. Did I ever tell you how comes I first discovered Dark City?
No, you didn't.
Because of my old man. As always,
he's an eternal source of inspiration for you, isn't he?
Yeah, he was. He loved a cult film, and he was a film man, let's say, and so he always paid attention to reviews and watched weird films. He got to see Solaris at the cinema. I mean, lucky bastard.
Yeah.
And the original Solaris anyway. And I can't remember if he told me he saw this at the cinema, because he told me he saw this and then said to me it was like The Matrix, And I remember him telling me that The Matrix must have stolen ideas from it. So maybe he saw it afterwards on VHS. I'm not sure. But I remember he told me about it, and then I never watched it with him. I think probably because he thought it was too adult for me to watch, and he was right. How old were we when The Matrix came out? 1999.
17, 18. Yeah.
16. I was 16 when I saw it.
I was 17, yeah.
I was 16. So I don't know if I would have appreciated Dark City at that point, because it's a very literary movie. There were the reason why there's 3 credits on the screenplay is because Alex Proyas wrote it and showed the script to producers. They said, this is a novel. We need it to be a script, and so that's why they got 2 other guys or person. I can't remember. They got the other person and David Squire to screenplay it. And you can say its influences are very deep, and literary. So I don't think I would have appreciated it at all at the time. However, over the years, I have basically put Dark City at the number 2 spot in my top 5 films of all time. Pretty much, for 15 years, 20 years probably. My favourite film of all time for 20 years. I mean, I'm not sure. If you had said to me now, I'm not sure what my top 5 would be. That's a discussion for another podcast, maybe. But for a long time, I would say it was Blade Runner, and then it was, of course, then Dark City. Interestingly enough, Blade Runner also had a terrible theatrical cut with narration that ruins the plot.
Yeah, they decided to patronise the audience.
Yeah, ironically. But personally, I just love dystopian, dark science fiction stories.
Mm-hmm.
Dark City was a massive influence on me personally. Like it got me into film noir, it got me into noir, it got me into dystopian fiction. It basically informs my reading for 10 years. You know, like I spent a long time like just trying to find out what inspired this film, the visuals especially, you know,
the uninviting, unwelcoming sort of like city, despite the fact it houses millions, sort of thing.
you know, Returner, my dystopian novel, is basically a combination of Dark City, Blade Runner, Escape from New York, and The Terminator. If you put all those together, and Metal Gear Solid, if you put all of those concepts together, you basically have my novel Returner. You know, just it absolutely, you know, was a massive thing for me. The starting mystery itself, Mark, is just a great hook, isn't it? It's just a great hook. Like,
because straight off the bat, you're like you have questions.
like he's being told he's a serial killer. I don't remember. Who are you? I don't even know my name.
I
You know,
love that sequence where he's on the street and he's looking at himself in the shop window and he's just trying.
Yes.
He knows he's Jay Murdoch. So
Yeah.
he just starts saying different first names just to see which rolls off the tongue.
Oh, that's so good. That's so
Yeah,
good.
there's just
I'm
that
Jay
just-
Murdoch. I'm Murdoch. I'm John Murdoch. I'm Jay.
yeah, it's just kind of that because that's what you would do in that situation with all the information you've got. That would be the first thing you'd do to sort of like which one sounds natural to me.
That's right. And Rufus Sewell's performance is like unhinged at that moment, isn't he?
Yeah,
He's
when he
literally,
looks up and realizes he's got a witness to his little mini breakdown, and it's just
yeah,
kind of
it's just,
yeah, it
it's
was
just, oh,
every scene
he
where
is-
he's by himself and all he is just emoting and just expressing his confusion with the situation he's found himself in. He carries scenes by
frustration,
himself
anger,
very well.
yeah, he's a great actor.
Yeah,
A
Just-
great actor.
very solid. So this is
I
what I'm
have
saying,
to-
man,
I-
the acting's so much better in Dark City.
I
But that's-
mean, I don't know, you know, Agent Smith and the way
Well, Hugo
he
Weaving, which I feel we
talks,
didn't give enough love to in the previous section,
you know,
is
like,
certainly an interesting.
yeah.
Which one would you say, Richard O'Brien or Hugo Weaving?
too different.
Yeah,
They're just too different. But like, where Richard O'Brien is like a character to him in himself, isn't he? He is himself,
Yeah.
and he basically plays himself, I would say. And he's eccentric and strange, like his character. So like that makes him individual and iconic. And Hugo Weaving, in interviews, said that the way he talks as Agent Smith, he developed over time, didn't he? And it's just so, you know.
it feels like someone wearing a skin suit trying to act like a human. It's like-
Yeah, well, it's just exactly what it is.
exactly.
Exactly what it is. But I just wanted to mention as well, because I like to mention the soundtrack to this to Dark City is fucking excellent as well.
I
don't know
will
if you
say
know-
that there were even times when I was listening to the soundtrack of this that I started to hear the horns and stuff like that.
It is quite similar to The Matrix.
Yeah, not exact. I mean, it's not like they've ripped off the soundtrack, but
Yeah,
there were times when I was like, this has got a shade of it there, and
yeah. And like in general, like the music afterwards, the main theme from this film was used in a lot of trailers afterwards. But something I think is really, really smart about the score, because you know a great movie score should reflect the visuals, as we always say. And there's this main like motif that runs through the film that starts off quite sparse, and it's repeated at certain points in the movie, and every time it's repeated, Trevor Jones, the composer, adds more and more layers to it and speeds it up and develops it more and more and more until the final moment when he has complete control over tuning and him and Mr. Book are fighting, the score just goes absolutely insane. And that's just such a great like audio representation of the gradual
the growth.
the growth, yes, of Murdoch's power. But also, I really like the more subtle pieces, the luscious pieces, such as the love theme for him and Emma, which sort of also sort of folds into the music for Shell Beach. It's really like dark and quite gothic almost with its sound, but there are these beautiful string motifs. And whereas a lot of the score in this film is very dark with lots of horns, as you said, and very foreboding and low, and you know, you get these moments of beauty that sort of represent like the humanity in this story. And this is what I was mentioning a minute ago, right before we start talking about the themes, which is my through line into that section, is that Emma's character, Jennifer Connelly's character, sort of represents the humanity that, you know, of Murdoch, which is love. you know, and human feelings and human emotions, because he has no idea who she is, and yet he still feels for her, right? There's that moment when he like breaks through the glass, which is when he's in prison, which is like emblematic of him breaking free, using his powers to break free from one realm to the other, and accepting his feelings for this woman that he actually doesn't remember. You know, which is I say it's really really potent with the overall message of the film. So, which for my money, first and foremost, is memory and experience versus humanity, Mark. Do our memories make us who we are? And what are we without our memories and our experiences? I mean, how do you even feel about this concept?
It's in some ways it ties to Metal Gear Solid in terms of the nature.
Oh yeah, yeah,
nurture.
yeah.
The whole kind of, are we the sum of our experiences, or is it something more inherent as to who we are? A soul, if you want to use any other term. And what guides us? If he'd been implanted with those serial killer memories, would he have leaned into the personality and become a serial killer? Or would he have broken away from the programming? And it's a difficult question to answer.
Exactly.
You can't say that. I mean, we are our life's experiences up to this point. Now, this is true. They inform our decisions going forward. But is there something more to it than that? Is it just the experiences, or is there something more inherent that guides us? That are some people born evil, some people born good, for want of better terms? You can't say for definite. And to actually experiment on it would be be kind of dark, to be honest, if we started doing that to people. Not saying it hasn't happened, but who knows? There's always been that eternal argument in science as to what makes a human being and what commands their morals.
That's definitely what this film is actually deep down concerned with. So, here's a little reference for you. So, as I mentioned earlier on, the memories that are injected into humans, the replacement memories, are ejected into the human through the forehead.
Mm-hmm.
And when Murdoch is using his powers, they come from his forehead, don't they?
Yeah, he kind of leans forward. I will be honest, if that scene didn't have effects in it, that'd be fucking hilarious.
It would be very funny.
But yeah, that's when. But yeah, when they manifest, they're both leaning forwards, projecting their foreheads forward, as if they're like a gun or something. Yeah.
Well, so can you think of something that is spiritually important to that specific point on the head?
Oh, you talk about the third eye?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the third eye, in multiple religions and practices, often relates to perception, sight beyond sight, the growth of perception, enlightenment. Exactly. Which is really interesting. It means that Murdoch as a character is seeing beyond the perceived reality and becoming even greater than it, which is also a reference to, that's obviously the point of the allegory of the cave. Furthermore, Mark, there's the spiral symbol that's also used for it. Do you know what the spiral symbol represents in multiple religions and practices?
Yeah, it's like fingerprints. It's what they make comparisons to.
No, he has it. He has the spiral symbol that is utilized in the art direction of the movie, such as on the title screen, as a fingerprint.
Yeah.
As well, the spiral in multiple practices represents the growth of awareness and the attainment of godhood.
Oh, because was it cycling in or cycling out?
It's hard to tell. You can't tell, but when it's clockwise, I think it is. It means perception and godhood.
Ah.
So, which is really interesting as well.
That's an interesting concept. I haven't come across that one before.
Yeah. I was actually looking it up today. But anyway, so what's really important about this movie is that Murdoch makes a choice. When it is revealed that his reality doesn't actually exist, in fact, every reality that he's ever known, he decides to make his own reality with the powers that he has, which is a powerful statement in itself. You can apply it
like
to
a man makes heaven. So
no. That's not what I'm getting at. You can apply it to prescience. nostalgia, thematically. This is as I say, a very meditative film, and it's really asking deep personal questions about who we are and the things we do. You know, do we do the things we do because of our upbringing, because of our past experiences? Nature versus nurture, or do we have a choice? That's what this film is saying to you. There's this great bit at the end of the film where Murdoch says, "I can make this world anything. All I have to do is concentrate hard enough." Without
his choice in that to make the world better wasn't to actually change the world itself. It was just to bathe it in sunlight.
Not really how I look at it. I think that the metaphorical implications are saying that Murdoch has had every single one of his realities taken away. He has no reality. Okay. So he just makes his own. He makes the reality that he wants. Which is Shell Beach and his wife and Emma and sunlight and the world from his memories that he thought were his. Now the thing is that Shell Beach doesn't exist. Shell Beach may never have existed. Shell Beach may never have been his memory. Emma may never have been his memory. Emma may never have existed. None of it could have been relevant to him, but he decides it's relevant to him. He chooses it to be relevant to him. And so, for me personally, the important message of this film, going back to what you were saying a minute ago about the choices we make, whether or not our experiences, our genetics, our memories inform us. Are we free of our past, let's say? Does the past inform everything that we do? Is the serial killer born a serial killer? In this case with Murdoch. No. Because he chooses to not be one. He chooses to make the world as he wants it to be. And I agree with that statement, personally. I err on the side of choice. I think that with enough self-control, we can be who we want to be and be free of the chains of our upbringing, free of our history, our parents, the rights and wrongs that life has done to us. I don't sit here and think, oh, my mum did this, my dad did this, or life did this to me, life did this to me. Don't get me wrong, right? There are people in this world who have suffered incredibly, and I'm not taking that away. My own personal experience here specifically, and I think that's what this film is about. It is about choice, and about choice being free of the shackles of our backgrounds, the information that informs our choices, and that we are able to make the right choice, the choice that is relevant, the choice that we want in the right situation, based on what we think is right and what we want. And I don't think...
Yeah.
Huh?
I can get behind that, man.
Yeah. And, The Matrix does not do this. I'm sorry.
The Matrix actually, in actual fact, does the exact opposite by giving its main character a destiny.
Yeah, exactly.
Where in his choices and the information he gets given, if anything, just keeps him on the path rather than leads him away from it.
Exactly. I mean, you could ask whether or not he's ever free of control or not in that film. I mean,
even once you get into the later movies, everything is a destiny which has been. Even gets that explained to him. I think the first choice is at the end of the second movie where he makes a decision that the others haven't.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the first key divergence. But up until that point, he's a destined one. Whilst this character, he is the one, is one that isn't destined, but he is one that's going to...
He's an anomaly.
Yeah, he's going to usurp.
Yeah. He's a glitch in the system, literally.
Yeah.
Which I think makes Murdoch's story very, very potent and very effective. I think with The Matrix, right, I think that, that when we were discussing in the previous section whether or not The Matrix was supposed to be just one movie or not, and I think that the idea is that, Neo breaks free of control in the first movie, and that's the end of the movie. And I think that, like, as you mentioned, his story over part 2 and 3 are just him being predestined constantly, right? In the end, he does basically...
He does exactly what he was created to do. He pulls a fucking Optimus Prime, and
yeah.
So yeah.
You know, and I think that like the writing in the second and third film just goes on and dilutes what was in the first film in many ways. You know, I think they had that concept of the one being a constant thing, you know, a cycle. They incorporated it to try and add more, you know, conflict to the narrative.
Yeah,
because
this was your destiny before because you did this before, and
so now you got to break from this. But even then, he still doesn't really break from it.
No,
really. You know, I've not seen the fourth Matrix film, never will. So, you know,
once again, not missing anything.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, but you know, Matrix. What's it? I'm fine with it. This, however, Dark City, all this stuff I'm talking about now is fucking awesome. This film is fucking awesome, and the more you watch it, the more you with you know information that you have from previous watch, the more it unlocks, the more you think about it, the more you put into it, the more you take out of it. This is like potentially, well, based on my top 5 anyway, or top 10 movies, it is the best film of the 90s, you know, but it is one of my favourite films of all time, and, you know...
It's just unfortunate that you can't discuss this movie in a bubble. You can't...
No.
You can't discuss it in a vacuum and see it just by itself, or discuss it just by itself because of the shadow of the Matrix looming. You have to address that when you. I mean, I'd love to be able to just talk about this movie and just espouse about the fact that it's just a fucking good movie.
Yes.
Which makes you think and makes you sort of like ponder concepts that maybe you haven't come across before in cinema. But with the unfortunate aspects that occurred with the Matrix, which it does demand a discussion on that. It's unavoidable, destined, if you will. But yeah.
Well, you can break that destiny, Mark, now and just accept them for what they are and just enjoy them both for being 2 great movies.
Yeah, you know, and they are 2 great movies for different reasons.
You know,
one for its phenomenal acting and themes, and one for its phenomenal effects and martial arts.
Yeah. You know, The Matrix was a really, really important movie in my teenage years, and I would say Dark City was a really, really important movie in my 20s. You know, so they're both like in the pantheon of important movies to me. Are like, you know, really important, really, really, really important, and great movies that have inspired me. And I've watched them both multiple times, and like, you know, I just keep giving. Matrix, I've been up and down on over the years, but I'm at this point now where I'm just like, I'm a bit too old for that hat now, and just quite happy really that I've got them both. So,
yeah,
you know, all I hope is that anyone who's been listening to this episode, haven't seen the movie, and you've listened to all of it, shame on you. You should have gone and watched it.
Absolutely.
You know, if you listened to the first part of the synopsis, were intrigued, went and watched it, and came back,
well done.
The rest of the episode, well done. You know, I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that some of our discussions about the themes and the ideas behind it were relevant. So, anyway, Mark, I think it's probably a good time there to knock this one on the head. What do you think?
I think we're there, man.
Yeah? You got nothing else to say about Dark City?
No, once again, backwards and forwards, man. We've done it.
Yeah, this is a great movie. I mean, there is more, to be honest with you. There is some imagery regarding Walter, Neptune, you know, and stuff like that you can go into, but I say I'm always more interested in the human side of the story, so that's what I try to focus on with the discussion of the themes. So, you know, it's got the potential to touch people and change people, in my opinion, you know.
Yeah.
So, that's it then, Mark. The podcast is finished. For info on the music we've used, please see the episode description. You can follow me at Writer GM Groves on Twitter /X, Facebook, and Instagram. Mark?
You can find me having an existential crisis about whether it's better to be cool or to have depth.
Well, that is an interesting question indeed. If you want to read my work, check out the website in the podcast episode description. There you will find articles, reviews, and some fiction. So, without further ado, I will bid you farewell, and hopefully see you soon.
Catch you later.